he just walked it in. Thank you, sorry. Ready? Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, the January 15th, 2019 meeting of the Charter Authorizing Panel is called to order. I would like to welcome everyone to the ADE Auditorium. I would ask at this time if you can check your electronic devices and silence them. The Charter Authorizing Panel oversees the authorization, renewal, revision, and revocation of charters. Legislation allows for individuals outside the department to serve on the panel, and as you see, we have a combination of ADE employees and outside people on our panel. Today I want to introduce to you, I guess, a new lineup that we have. I am Ivy Pfeffer, the chair of the panel. We have Greg Rogers, ADE Assistant Commissioner for Fiscal and Administrative Services. Dr. Angela Kramers, Deputy Director for Career and Technical Education at the Department of Career Education. We have Mike Wilson, an education advocate and attorney. Dr. Nackerman Williams, a former State Board of Education member. Toyce Newton, also a former State Board of Education member. And our newest member is Phil Baldwin, who is CEO of Citizens Bank. And I'm going to give Mr. Baldwin just a minute to introduce himself if he would like. And we want to welcome him to our panel today.
Well, I'm proud to be on the panel, and so with my fellow panel members, Madam Chairman, thank you for your leadership. I've been in Arkansas forever. I've known Dr. Williams for 30 or 40 years, and Toyce for almost that long, and I look forward to meeting everybody else. I'm passionate for education. I've been married for 38 years and have 3 children and almost 5 grandchildren, 4 and 1 on the way. Thank you.
We look forward to having you serve here with us. As chair, it's my goal to facilitate a fair and responsible hearing. I will request that each person speaking please state your name and title for the record, and also to speak clearly in the microphone for the benefit of the panel, the audience, and our viewing audience. This entire meeting is being live streamed and recorded. We always want to thank Ms. Sharon Hill, our court reporter. She will be providing a transcript of this meeting, and it will also be posted on the ADE website. So before we actually begin, in looking at the agenda, I think we've had some adjustments to the agenda, and I just want to confirm so that the panel is all on the same page as far as the agenda. But we do have an item that has been pulled. Is that correct? Okay. And I want to make sure that is item number 5. Is that correct? Okay, so panel, that item was pulled prior to the meeting, so that also gives you an idea. And also, I would like for us, would like to go ahead and ask for the panel's consideration that we can recess from about 10:30 this morning until about 1 in order to allow us and our agency personnel to be able to participate in watching the inauguration event and the governor's address at 12:30. So depending on where we are in the agenda, we could take a recess from about 10:30 to 1. So I would ask for later on we can make a motion to recess. Sound okay?
Can we watch it here?
We can watch it here, yes. Dan's going to have it live streamed. We'll be able to watch it here, have a lunch break, and watch his address. Okay. All right. Well, if everything is good, let's go ahead and move forward with the consent agenda. We have minutes from the December 18th and 19th Charter Authorizing Panel meeting. If I could get a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. And at this time, we'll move on to our action agenda, and we will have, Mr. Ballard is going to be presenting that to us.
It's just like we've done before, merging those.
Good morning, panel. Reginald Ballard, Arkansas Department of Education. Our first item on the agenda is the 2019 Open Enrollment Charter application. The 2019 Open Enrollment Charter School application includes revisions to existing prompts as suggested by various stakeholders. Approval is requested to make the application publicly available.
Okay, panel, do you have any questions related to the timeline or so the first item we're looking at is the timeline, correct?
The open enrollment, yes, there are a series of documents that are included inside the agenda. The first one, I believe, is the timeline, and then it goes into the application itself, as well as some of our supporting documents and prompts that we require charter schools to fill out before going through our CERC review process.
One, panel members, are there any questions about this that you have?
No question on my part, no.
No. One question that I had, and I probably should know this, but I wanted to check, the mandatory applicant workshop, is that something that has been in place prior?
Yes.
Okay. And is that workshop, is that a face-to-face workshop, or are there allowances if something were to occur that an applicant couldn't, for there to be, like a virtual Zoom? Mm-hmm.
I believe that it's been face-to-face in the past, but if the panel would like, we could offer a Zoom.
I just didn't know if that had ever presented a problem for an applicant, as far as we know, in having that mandatory face-to-face, if it's just scheduled for one time. And I wanted to ask, it looks like we have someone who may.
Okay, yeah, so we do allow for virtual.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have a question?
And this meets all the timeline requirements that we have. As for getting the charter application before us.
Yes.
In other words, if a school is interested in applying, their first application hits the system when? I'm looking at the timeline here. Oh, due by April the 25th. If they're looking to open the school in, let's just say 2020, then April the 25th would be that's when the applications are due.
That's when the application is due, and then they would go into our process.
Okay.
And we would have a series of review.
Okay. Thank you. I have no other questions.
Yes. Okay. If there are no questions, if we have a motion to approve the updated timeline and applications.
So moved.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. A motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Item number 2, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Go ahead. So item number 2 is the 2019 District Conversion Charter School application. The 2019 District Conversion Charter School application includes revisions to existing prompts as well as suggested by various stakeholders. Approval is requested to make the application publicly available.
Okay, panel, any questions on the district conversion application?
None.
No questions? All right. If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
So we have a motion to approve, is that correct? Motion to approve item number 2. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, thank you, and we appreciate the department's work, the staff work on updating those, and I know each year the process gets a little better and technology things worked out, so we appreciate that. Okay, so we will go ahead and move on to item number 3, which is the request for an open enrollment charter school renewal of the Covenant Keepers Charter School. Thank you. And we have Ms. Hyatt, you are recognized.
Mary Claire Hyde, Arkansas Department of Education. I thought I would go over the renewal procedures just since you did most of them last month and since we have a new member. So this is a renewal that was tabled from last month that you'll be hearing this month. So every person, with the exception of the attorneys representing the parties that plan to testify or speak, need to be sworn before the renewal hearing begins. The charter school applicant will have 20 minutes. This is a unique situation in that there are kind of two different parties, so those two parties will share the 20 minutes in order to present to you their case for renewal. Anyone that's opposed to the renewal will also split 20 minutes between whoever has signed up in opposition. And then the applicant will have an additional 5 minutes to respond to any opposition. You, of course, Dr. Pfeffer can allow additional time as you see fit to answer any questions. Following the presentation, the panel may ask questions of the applicant and then vote on the matter. So the question today is to renew or not to renew the application for Covenant Keepers. And I think we have someone from Friendship who will speak first, and then following that, a representative from Covenant Keepers.
Okay, so can we have all representatives of the charter and anyone speaking in opposition please stand to receive the oath? Okay, if you'll raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. So I have, for school presenters, I have Joe Harris from Friendship, and to start with, and then so you will speak, and if you have others who are going to speak during this initial time, if they'll state their name for the record prior to speaking, I can recognize others. All right, so we, as Ms. Claire said, you will be speaking, then we will also hear from Dr. Tatum, and if, was Dr. Tatum sworn in? No. Okay, we'll do that at the time she's going to speak, so, okay. All right, Mr. Harris, I'm gonna go ahead and start the time, and we will have 20 minutes total for the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Joe Harris. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Friendship Education Foundation. The Friendship Education Foundation is a nonprofit charter management organization which has entered into a memorandum of understanding with the governing board of Covenant Keepers. We began our work to support the management of the school on July 21st, 2018, the beginning of this 2018 school year. It was understood in the MOU that we would oversee the day-to-day management of the school from July through the end of the 2018-2019 school year, which ends on June 30th. In the short time that we have overseen the mandates that this commission issued to Covenant Keepers, we have instructed the school leader to resign, replace the school's board of trustees, and put in place tighter financial controls. I'm pleased to report that we have accomplished the mandates of this commission. The school leader resigned on 9/29, Dr. Valerie Tatum. 100% of the board has resigned as of 12/31/18, and we instituted new financial procedures, of which new segregation of duty process that includes clearer systems for checks and balances in the financial management of the school. Since Friendship has taken over the management school, we've hired a new school leader. Her name is Lauren Chapman, and she stands beside me. We've continued to work with the school's bookkeeper and an independent accounting firm to manage the day-to-day books of the school. The school now is operating with a balanced operating budget that supports the education, instructional, and operation needs of the school. We also have completed a comprehensive school effectiveness plan that is guiding the leadership, instruction, and culture of the school. We've hired 3 new full-time Latino Spanish-speaking staff, 2 of which are ESL teacher, and the third is a behavioral specialist. In a school with over 73% of its students speaking Spanish as their first language, we have worked to ensure that the school is able to address the language barriers, academic and cultural needs of the Spanish-speaking students at the school. All of this was done since we took over the school in July. Friendship will continue its management of the school through the end of this school year, 2018-2019, which ends June 30th. This all brings me to why I stand before you today. At the last Charter Authorizing Panel Board meeting in December, representatives of both City of Fire and Friendship asked this body to delay its decision to renew and transfer the charter from CK to Friendship until the next meeting, which brings us here today. We asked then for additional time because at the CK and Friendship, at that time, CK and Friendship had not agreed upon a process and the terms of such a charter transfer. At that time, we believed that we could work together in good faith to have a signed agreement outlining the terms, structure, and future obligations of each party, in which Friendship would assume the location and continued operations of the school for future years. That was all spelled out in the charter agreement. It is with great difficulty that I must say to this panel that we've not entered into any such agreement to transfer the charter. The reason for the breakdown was chiefly due to slow response and a delay in City of Fire producing documentation to support additional debt that was included in a debt schedule presented to Friendship. Obligations that would be expected for Friendship to assume after the charter was transferred. This information was just presented to Friendship on January 9th. This delay by City of Fire produced supporting documentation just a week before today, which made it impossible for Friendship to verify the more than $127,000 in new claim debt added to the debt schedule presented to us last week. As a result, our inability to agree on the terms of such a charter transfer agreement, Friendship will continue to operate the school through the end of this school year, regardless of whether or not this panel decides to either revoke or non-renew of City of Fire's charter. Whatever the decision handed down today, Friendship will continue to fulfill the terms of the memorandum of understanding to which we are currently managing the school. In closing, should this body vote not to renew Covenant Keepers' charter, and the decision is made to close at the end of this school year, Friendship will assist in any school closure activities mandated by the Arkansas Department of Education. Friendship would also be amenable to any other options that could result in Friendship or another entity to occupy the current school building and keep the school open. A school in southwest area of Little Rock where none of the neighborhood schools that CK's current students would be forced to attend are all performing under a D performance grade. I would like to now turn over the podium to the board members of City of Fire to discuss with this panel their desire to either seek a renewal or a non-renewal of their charter. Thank you for your time today.
Okay, I'm going to pause the time for just a minute. Thank you, Mr. Harris. And Ms. Hyatt, I need just to get some clarification here. Okay, so we've just heard the presentation from Mr. Harris that basically indicates that the application we have in front of us, which would be the transfer to Friendship, from Covenant Keepers to Friendship, that's not going to be going forward based on his presentation. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, then, and as he stated, he would like to turn it over to Covenant Keepers to talk with us about what they would see as next steps. So is it appropriate to go ahead and listen to the next, at this time, go ahead and listen to Covenant Keepers, or is there something that we need to do in between?
So I think you can go ahead and listen to City of Fire, Covenant Keepers, and anything they want to present in terms of their renewal. And Ms. Perry can come up if she's got additional things to add, but it's my understanding that all of their renewal documentation that we have received in terms of a renewal application and any supporting information is really based on Friendship coming in and kind of taking over the school. So now that that's not going to happen, the information that you have in terms of the renewal application and supporting documentation is really deficient. But Covenant Keepers, City of Fire may have additional information to present to you today. I'm not 100% sure what they plan to ask for, so I would recommend that you allow them to speak in the remaining 20 minutes and just kind of follow the hearing procedure and
Okay.
see.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
I just want to make sure everyone's understanding the process that we're going through. Okay, so at this time, do we have someone from Covenant Keepers, City of Fire Ministries? All right. Okay, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Please state your name for the record, and you're recognized.
I'm Valerie Tatum with City of Fire, Community Development. You all know every year my voice just goes out during this time. So I'm Valerie Tatum. I'm retired at this point. I was the founder and director of Covenant Keepers Charter School. First of all, I think it's due respect that we apologize for being here at this place. When I retired, October 1, 9/29, my goal was not to stand here anymore to do this. I made the choice 2015 with APSRC to start transferring me out of Covenant Keepers as I wanted to get into local government, and that's still my aspiration. I do want to say that we entered a MOU, which was worked through with APSRC. There's been some glitches with that. Then we worked through a school transition report. It's been some issues with that. I heard Mr. Harris say that the debt was just given to him January 9th. That's not what we do. We have an attorney on board that we started having conversations with, Mr. David Jones, right before the Thanksgiving holidays. I would say now, the reason we're standing here today, Dr. Valerie Tatum, and I shouldn't be standing here. Friendship mentioned in a school transition plan, they were going to renew the school. That was my reason for leaving. Another problem, we submitted the debt. I want our attorney to speak on times and date. Finally, we even had huge conversations with Friendship during the Christmas break. So, for one, I'm concerned because I'm standing here because it's not my responsibility to renew the school. That's been given over to Friendship, and they said they were going to do it. The debt has been presented. So my question is, why am I standing here to renew the school? I want this to be a disclaimer. City of Fire Community Development, we don't want the school. Our job was to transfer so we can continue to support, we could continue to keep a niche out there in Southwest Little Rock. I promised that for over 15 years. Now we're here at the place of renewal or non-renewal. So to my point, as late as Sunday, the attorney members of City of Fire Community Development. Talked to Mr. Harris. He said he would let us know something by noon Monday. I got a call. Mr. Tatum got an email. I got a call from Virginia Perry saying, Dr. Tatum, we have received a letter from Friendship to say they are not interested in renewing the school. But we were told by noon they would get back with us. So I say this. I put the disclaimer out. We don't want the school, but we have individuals here that could possibly move the school forward. Because I would hate all of City of Fire Community Development's work, the performance, the niche, and the things that we've done for that community to just be all lost. That's my reason for standing here today. Because I don't want that school to close. Someone needs to be out there running it, and Friendship said they would run it. So I'm confused, again, why I'm standing here today on false pretense of them renewing the school. And I would like for Scott Smith to speak as well, because I think we started the conversation. And I don't know where APSRC is in this. I'm standing just confused here. You see, I don't have paper. I'm not ready to present because this is not my place to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tatum. Okay. I think Ms. Hyde is standing out. We've heard from the applicant, and if check and see, is there anyone to speak in opposition? There is no one. Okay, so at this time, I think it would be appropriate to open it up for panel questions. Panel members, you may have some questions for both Mr. Harris and Dr. Tatum, and so I guess I'll just start and see who, on this end, do you want to start with any questions? Dr. Williams?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Excuse me. Mr. Harris, please. Mm-hmm. You know, as I listen, it looks like you all have done a lot of good things for the school, especially as for separation of duties and some proper policies and so forth in place. The debt seems to be the linchpin here, if I'm listening closely. How much is the total debt, and what type of debt is it such that you all are not able to absorb it within the transfer?
Sure. What we have is, when we drafted the charter transfer agreement, we asked for a number of documents. First and foremost was to really get a clear picture of what was owed to the school. At that time, that debt included two items. It included rent, backdated rent in the amount of $43,000. It also included outstanding bills to Derman, Hamilton, and Associates, which are the independent accountants. That's the debt schedule we got at the beginning of the terms of this agreement. At our last meeting, right before we were to meet, we were presented with a new debt schedule. That was at the last meeting here. That included additional debt that totaled $80,000, an additional 80 on top of the 40 and the 14. It was not until last week, January 6th, where we presented with a new debt schedule that included $127,000 additional dollars. We asked for supporting documents, and we got supporting documents. But that supporting documents really put us in an awkward position because we didn't have sufficient time to do our due diligence, and what we did have before us led us to believe that there were more additional questions that needed to be answered by ADE as well as City of Fire.
Mm-hmm. And usually when you do a transfer, there's usually some debt. You know, typically there's always some debt with a school. And that debt is usually able to absorb and, you know, just pay it out of your per pupil expenditures or whatever your revenue stream would be. Are you saying that this, I was just trying to do some quick addition here, because I'm looking at about 266K or something roughly like that. Are you all saying that's too much debt to absorb, or are you concerned that there may be additional debt? What exactly is the linchpin here?
Sure. The first debt schedule had two pieces of debt. One was rent, and the other one was outstanding invoices or payables to the accounting firm. We did our due diligence. Those are legitimate debt.
Okay.
Before we met, we went through the efforts to pay down that debt. We paid Denman Hamilton their entire $14,000. Then we paid half of the outstanding balance of the rent, with a goal of paying the additional rent off through within the next 3 to 4 months. So we were working to pay off all of the legitimate debts that we had in front of us at the time that we began this agreement.
Okay. And so the additional 127 is kind of the piece that no plan to address that debt and so
Well,
forth.
we wanted clarification of what that debt was. We did a research on what was presented to us reflected that this debt was from 2016. We initially first step was to go back to the audit, the 2016 audit. It was our belief, based on what the information we had just received, that that debt on the 2016 schedule was reported as a donation. We asked, and I asked this just on last Friday, if there was proof of it either being a donation or a loan. To date, we have not received any verification of that. Now, what I do know and what we found out is there's a difference in the process. If this were a legitimate loan, there would have need to been a loan agreement in place with the board, and then I'm not sure what the threshold is, but the state or ADE would have need to approve of a loan. We did not receive proof of either. And the other part is the donation. If this was categorized as a donation, then donations are not expected to be returned.
So we're at the point where basically there is no clarification of what this is, basically.
Well, we've been told two stories.
Okay,
One that it's a donation and one that it's a loan.
okay. I can see.
May I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Who is the loan or donation from? Do you know who the?
City of Fire to Covenant Keeper.
Okay. Questions on this side? Ms.
I have a
Newton?
question, probably for you, Dr. Pfeffer, or someone from the Charter Authorizing Organization. What, is there a procedure in place to track this type of debt and whether or not it's resolved or dissolved at some point? Because it could, you know, as it is today, it seems problematic that, first of all, we can't identify, or maybe we can, after discussion, explanation, whether or not it was a loan or whether or not it was a gift. But it would seem to be very confusing and problematic if there's not a way to track accounting. Phil probably would know this a lot better than I would as a banker, of what it is, how it is, what the obligation of the charter is. Say, for instance, if the City of Fire made a donation as opposed to a loan, that's just their donation. Or if there weren't conditions. So I'm trying to find out what the obligation of the Arkansas Department of Education is to track this type of donation or input of money, and how it goes out and back and forth.
And Mr. Rogers is probably one to speak as far as financial oversight from school districts, but you also have the issue of how things are reported into the e-finance system. And so, you know, from a Department of Ed standpoint, it would be very difficult to monitor things you know, if they're not reported, and we can only go with a lot of that. So I'll let Mr. Rogers, did you want to address her question?
Were you about to?
Okay, or Ms. Hyatt?
Mary Claire Hyatt, Arkansas Department of Education. So just a couple of notes on your concern. So in the charter school rules, as well as in the law, if there is a loan that totals a certain amount of money or is not going to be repaid in a year such that it would constitute a debt of the school, there is a requirement that the charter ask for permission from the commissioner to incur that debt. It's my understanding that that process was not followed in this case. So typically, that's how we monitor that, is that the commissioner receives a request from the charter school, reviews whatever the debt is, and then makes a decision as to whether to approve the charter school to incur that debt or deny, which would mean that the charter school could not incur that debt. I don't believe that that happened in this case. In terms of how we would monitor it going forward, if you chose to renew, you could add that as some sort of requirement of the renewal. If you choose not to renew, in the charter school rules and also in the law, there's very clear procedures that direct the Department of Education within 15 days to begin working with the school that was non-renewed to review finances, look at the vendors, start going through their finances to see what they have, who they need to pay, what outstanding debt there is, and that kind of stuff.
Okay. Follow up? Mr. Wilson, question?
Well, yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman, and maybe Ms. Hyatt can help me out with this too. It seems that Friendship wants to continue to operate the school at least through the end of the memorandum of understanding, which I guess would be summer 19. If Friendship wants to assume the charter and City of Fire is willing to give it up, it looks to me like we could figure out a way to do that. I understand that Friendship does not want to assume that outstanding debt. The City of Fire would have to figure out some way to satisfy it if it's a debt. So my thought is to get Friendship in there operating the school and let them apply for a new charter if they want to, revoke City of Fire, leave the debt where it is, the City of Fire. I don't know how else to do it. I don't know whether we can do it.
I'm getting my steps in today. So one option that you do have, and there's not a request from Friendship right now, but should you non-renew or revoke covenant keepers, there, of course, any school, including Friendship, could have the opportunity to come in and either next application cycle ask for a new charter to occupy the same space, or come and ask for an amendment request to add a license to their current charter to occupy that space. So that is a possibility should there be a request. Right now we don't have that kind of request, but it's not outside the realm of possibilities for the future.
Clarity's sake, I got it.
Yes, and then Dr. Kramer's after you.
Okay, thank you, I'm sorry. For clarity's sake, if I hear it correctly, and I want to be corrected if I'm wrong, City of Fire does not want the school. Correct, okay? And Friendship, with the debt, does not want the school. I mean, with the debt is what I'm...
We believe our first job is to be good stewards of finances. This is for a school. We would be assuming debt that was unclear, and it's our understanding that were that debt to be repaid by the charter management organization or the school itself, it would open us to a external audit. And given the documentation that we have, we don't believe that we could defend that as a legitimate debt against the school. However, Friendship is, and if this, no one wants to see the school close. And we entered into the memorandum of understanding, believe that we could make some significant difference and apply for the renewal. We have done that. We put in new measures. We're already seeing growth in academic gains. We're also seeing a reduction in truancy. So we believe that we have the ability, the talent to really keep the school open. We've not asked formally, but we are supportive of the school remaining open, either Friendship or some other entity managing the school. But Friendship would be interested in continuing the school without the debt.
Absolutely. I guess my point for me and the rest of the panel would be, I'm trying to determine whether renewal is even an option if there's no one requesting a renewal.
Right. And that's what I wanted to clarify. I mean, basically where we are today is we have a renewal application, and that renewal application is that the charter be transferred to Friendship, and Friendship would move on at the end of this school year as the management organization over Covenant Keepers. So I think we hear what you're saying, but at the same time, based on what we have today, you are not moving forward with this application for renewal.
Yes, with our request now at this time.
Okay.
But, you know, we entered this with the same intentions, which is to ensure that this school remains open.
But if we do not move forward with this renewal request, then the question is, what happens at the conclusion of the 18-19 school year? So I think that's kind of where
Yes.
where we are right now. And Dr. Kramers, you did have a question, so.
I was just gonna make note that there was a transition plan document, and within that, there was a transition plan cost summary, and none of the debt mentioned is within that. That was from October of 18. So I didn't know if you shared that with the other group, if they had the opportunity to review and give feedback back in October when you did the transition plan. But that's kind of my question, and from the transition plan cost summary, I know it was mentioned some of the debt is back rent, and some of the budget was over 65,000 plus an additional 150,000 toward facility funding. So I'm just kind of, that raises a flag of why there's back rent when there was adequate facility funding as well. So there's just a lot of concerns in addition to the renewal issue even being on the table.
Can we get Ms. Tatum to just give us a little bit of feedback here? I just want to make sure that we get both sides.
Thank you. When you go back and you look at the 2016 audit, you will see on the audit trail, some of those were donations. We have given the documentation that's on the audit trail that shows those were not donations in my transition out. If you go back and you look at the transition plan, to your point, Friendship received $150,000 for just meeting Covenant Keepers. $140,000 was for a grant that APSRC for Ms. Chapman's salary. It's in the transition plan. We've yet to get that money. $65,000 is money that we work with the department, the charter school office, to get the facilities funding. Also, my salary in there left $112,000. I stand here today saying it is money to pay the debt. Ms. Chapman has been placed in my place as the salary when there's money at the top of the transition plan that shows $140,000. The money that the back rent, $65,000 would take care of that and have some worked out. We've been working with Greater Second Baptist Church. I stand here today, if we have not received any other money, and some of that money is donations, and I would like for our attorney to speak. The checks and the documentation that was given, it's all accounted for. City of Fire Community and our local board, back in 2010, I got in big trouble in breaking the law giving the school money to save it, I wouldn't repeat that dumb mistake twice. I was told to go and establish a line of credit. We did, for about $98,000. The department, we were supposed to be closing, Mr. Rogers. So guess what Hope Credit Union did? Valerie, I think y'all are closing. We have to pull that back. That $98,000 that we were supposed to get. So guess what? City of Fire, we had to keep the school going. And this is why we are here today. So there's money there. Keep in mind, I've done the budget before. I know what the budget looks like at Covenant Keepers. I said it this year before leaving, to ensure that the debt and things could be paid according to plan. We were going to report that money to the Arkansas Department of Education. I started transitioning out and started working with the department in APSRC, and this is where it landed us today. So, board, it's money there in the budget. Friendship said they were going to give us the money. My salary there was $120,000. Ms. Chapman is getting that salary. I don't understand why there's no money.
Okay, panel, do you have other questions?
I do. I have concern. I don't know what's a question or concern, but it seems to be to the advantage of Covenant Keepers to work this out, given the fact that we may have the option today of revoking or renewing the charter or continuation. And if in the event that is revoked, then City of Fire stands to hold all the obligation for the debt, as I understand it. I may be wrong. So it just seems that whatever could be, Mr. Harris, on your end, you say, we're asking for documents, and it seems reasonable that you would, and it also seems reasonable that the City of Fire, on the other hand, based on the fact that they may have to assume all the debt, if I'm understanding correctly, and I may not understand department policy, but it's a compromise or to both entities. And it seems like the City of Fire and the nonprofit, and understanding nonprofits as I do, would be saddled with some debt that it would be impossible unless a benefactor showed up and just gifted it. So I just can't see, to the extent that if there's a possibility of this arrangement and transition being worked out, it would be to the benefit of City of Fire, I think. That's just my perception. And if it's revoked, you have the option to come in without debt and apply for it. So I don't know what that is, a question, comment, or just my rambling.
Can I follow up, Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr.
To that-
Baldwin,
to
and
that
then
question.
Mr. Rogers.
The situation we're in now, it's hard to see an outcome for it because all the pieces aren't in place. Would it help you all if there were, and I don't even know if this can be done, but if there is more time, could you all get together and come back with an agreement and a plan, or has the time lapsed and are you set where you're at right now?
Okay, just a moment. We're gonna answer this question, and I will see if there's anyone that has not gotten to speak should be speaking.
Mary Claire Hyde, Arkansas Department of Education. I'll also let Friendship respond, but I just wanted to note a concern just from the department perspective about pushing this any further. So if the renewal does not move forward, all of the students that are there will need to either go back to their home district, find another school to go to, another charter school. We start running into school choice application deadlines, other open enrollment charter school lotteries happening. And for the benefit of the students, I would just caution the board to think thoroughly about how pushing it another month. So if we heard it in February, it would go before the state board and not be final until March, which is pushing it really close for the students who need to find other places to go. And we did already push it 1 month to allow additional time for them to get together.
Yeah. And so, Ms. Hyde, I think there've been a number of complex issues raised here and thinking through on decisions. I mean, the decision today, under normal circumstances, we would be reviewing an application and deciding whether or not to approve the application, which would be for renewal, or whether or not to revoke, or, always tabling a decision. With this here, though, basically, the renewal application is moot. If Friendship says they do not want to move forward with the renewal, is that correct?
Yes, it's my opinion that because the renewal application, all the information in the application was based on Friendship taking over the school, that if Friendship no longer wishes to move forward and City of Fire says they don't want the school and has not presented additional renewal information, that essentially you no longer have a renewal application in front of you, such that they've essentially non-renewed themselves. It would be the same as if a renewal cycle came up and you never received a renewal application. Therefore, I don't even think that this board would have to vote to non-renew, because the parties have non-renewed themselves by Friendship withdrawing their part of the application and City of Fire not wishing to move forward. And at this point, it's so far past the deadline for the renewal application that trying to get a renewal application together, I think would be problematic, just considering the fact that Friendship had the benefit of working with the school for almost a year before submitting their renewal application. So those are just some concerns. But it is my opinion that really you don't have a renewal application in front of you at this point unless Friendship changes its position.
Given the fact that City of Fire has indicated that they are finished with the school, so it's not a win-win or, it's just a situation. It would be dissolved one way or the other. So if Friendship doesn't choose to continue to transition, then it's gone, because City of Fire has indicated that they're not willing to come in to, continue their operation.
That's correct. So basically, since both parties have said they don't wish to move forward with the renewal, then the school would continue operating through June 30th of this school year, and then would be closed. Immediately, the department would begin the procedures that go along with non-renewal or revocation to begin looking at the things we talked about before, the debts and that kind of stuff, and working with the school to get notices out to teachers, students, and that kind of stuff. Of course, that could change if someone came in next month and asked for a license or something like that. But moving from today, I would say we would just begin the non-renewal procedures and begin issuing notices to vendors and students and follow those. And that's in Section 7 of the Charter School Rules, if you wanted to look at what they all are.
Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ms. Hyde, suppose that this panel votes to revoke City of Fire, period, today. Can Friendship come in? Friendship has other charter schools operating. Can they come in tomorrow and ask for a license to continue their operation there?
So Friendship or any other school
Sure.
has an ability to come in and request an amendment to add a license to an existing charter, and could use that school, that building, as the basis of that. We've seen that with other charter schools that have absorbed other charter schools, and that's not an issue at all. I think we would have to talk about timeline, so we'd have to make sure it didn't start before June 30th and that kind of stuff, but that's all stuff we could work out with anyone who wanted to do that. And so if someone does wish to do that, they can do that at their option.
Okay. And there've been a couple of questions related to APSRC and the work they've done. So if, Mr. Scott Smith, if you could also assist us with this, I know your organization has tried to work out an arrangement so that the continuity would continue at this school.
Yep. Madam Chair, members of the panel, Scott Smith with Arkansas Public School Resource Center. As some members of the panel might remember, this began many months ago when Covenant Keepers was basically before the panel in what is often referred to as a show cause status. There was an arrangement worked out at the end of that where Ms. Tatum agreed on behalf of Covenant Keepers to a transition in leadership and to change the board governance of the school going forward, and we agreed to try and assist in that process. For several months, we tried to find various charter organizations that might be interested in working with the school. Finally come to Friendship, who said they would be interested, set up meetings with Valerie and Joe, and began working on an assignment agreement. In the middle of that, there was an MOU for management services, which allowed Ms. Tatum to step out of the leadership role. We did not draft that MOU. That was drafted by Friendship. There's been some things referred to as far as grant dollars in there. Those were never guaranteed. They may come to fruition, but that was a competitive grant process. We were not a party to that agreement. We drafted this assignment agreement, which was a provision in the rules and regs that allowed for a voluntary assignment of a charter from one entity to another. And virtually we're there, we came to this debt issue. And the debt issue specifically, there are other components to it, but one specific component was it appears that some members of the City of Fire Board personally incurred a loan or some obligations, and those funds were provided to the school in some format, and whether that's considered a proper public debt or a private debt of the school became the snag or the issue in that assignment agreement. The concern from Friendship's perspective was, can you use whatever public funds are remaining in the account to pay that debt if it's a private debt? Will that set them up for an audit issue going forward? So that became the problem with the assignment agreement. That's when we were here before you last time, and we're trying to reach some kind of resolution on that. At that point in time, the parties with me here asked for an extension for 30 days to try and see if we could resolve this issue. There's some legitimate question as to what that debt is, or whether it's public debt or private debt, and it could be viewed in one format or another. Seeing that it looked like there may not be a possible resolution with regards to the assignment agreement, we subsequently drafted a proposed agreement that would allow for the official revocation of the charter, and that Friendship would simultaneously file a petition amending their charter to ask to basically assume the school, okay? The reason we drafted that petition was if you go through the revocation process, there's a receivership process in that where the state takes over the financial control of the schools, and the state walks you through the debt, and whatever funds, legitimate funds, are in the school, those funds are then applied to whatever the legitimate debt of the school is. Mm-hmm. And that would clear out those issues to the extent, as Covenant Keepers are saying today, that there's plenty of funds there and that the debts are legitimate, then that would walk those issues through. To the extent that that's not true, those issues would be dealt with in that process. It also would create a clean break for Friendship going forward, so that none of those issues would attach to Friendship moving forward. It's my understanding, we were not part of the conversations, that there may have been some failure to communicate. I think you're hearing some of that after that agreement was submitted. Whatever that is or isn't, we don't know. But that's how we get to where we are today. In part, there were other issues raised, something about 990 forms in the IRS. Those may or may not have been resolved, but that was the primary issue that was at play. And our conversations primarily have been with Mr. Jones or Mr. Harris, and that's been the extent of our involvement as of late in this process. So that's where we were and what we've tried to do to assist.
Okay, so panel, do you have questions for Mr. Smith?
Yes. If, I'm trying to put two pieces together now. Since there's basically a non-renewal of this charter before us, I mean, it's gonna non-renew itself. Does the state, does the same financial review by the state that takes place as you noted, if there's a revocation of the charter? Does the state step in and then go through the same process of assigning debt?
We don't assign the debt, and so if the state steps in, if there's non-renewal or revocation, then we do step in, but our first obligation is to make sure all the federal taxes are paid, all salary taxes, all those are paid. And then we go down with what debt is remaining, with what funds we are remaining that we know of at the time, we begin those payments until the funds for the school are exhausted.
Would you all, in a case like this, you all have a process to determine whether a debt is a legitimate debt or not?
We would do the same thing that Friendship is having to do right now, go through the process of trying to figure out what the debt was, what it was used for, how it was obtained, the same things that they're having, we would have to ask those questions if it was.
Okay. But once you all make, it's a difference between you all making the determination and Friendship making that determination.
Yeah, it would
Okay.
be.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith?
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Hyatt, has anyone signed up for public comment that has not had a chance to speak? No public comment? Okay. So, at this time, panel, I think we have asked questions. We've gotten a picture of where we are.
The gentleman from the City of Fire.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. You had not signed up for public comment. Is that accurate? Okay. I will go ahead and allow you the public comment time, which is at 3 minutes. Ms. Hyatt? Okay. 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Mr. Taylor on the board, I'm City Fire Development Board. We have come in contact with a party that would love to make that transition also. I remember the last time we were here, someone said if you don't want Friendship to do it, we do have someone, and we have someone here that would like to speak as far as getting the charter and transfer it, and also doing a renewal also. So that's what's on the agenda. And also with Friendship, we're having a lot of, I guess, relational issues, and we really have to concentrate on make sure we have those resolved as we move forward. So I don't want these students to have any type of repercussions from the relationship between Friendship and Covenant Keepers. Okay? And I do have someone who said that they would like to speak in as far as making that transitional moment.
I think, though, my concern was with having someone speak about a transition is that this is the first that we're hearing of it, and we're not going to be able to make a decision today as far as if there's new interest for a new entity to come in. And so, Ms. Hyde, I think I need your guidance here.
Mary Claire Hyatt, Arkansas Department of Education. So I'll go back to what I said before, which is that the application cycle for renewal has come and gone. We did receive a renewal application. That renewal application no longer exists because Friendship has indicated that they don't wish to move forward with it. City of Fire has indicated that they don't wish to move forward with it. Any new entity would not have submitted a renewal application, and at this point, that deadline has come and gone. They are in the same position as any other school might be, that they would still have the opportunity to come and ask for a new charter school in that same building, serving that same population. But at this point, I think having a new entity come before you today and ask to move forward with a renewal when we haven't received any renewal application, supporting documentation, information about the board of directors, the finances, I think that would be improper.
And so, panel, I think at this time, we need to go ahead and move forward with the decision as far as it relates to the application we have in front of us today, which is a renewal application that is no longer being asked to be renewed by the entity that was there.
What do we do?
Yeah, so, it would be my preference, since you don't have a renewal application in front of you, just for clarity, that you do vote to accept the voluntary non-renewal of the school, so that we do have something for the state board to look at when they review, and just for clarity for all the parties involved. But I want to be clear that you do not have a renewal application in front of you right now, as all the parties of the renewal application have indicated they don't wish to move forward. So I think the proper motion would be to accept the voluntary non-renewal or not to accept the voluntary non-renewal, in which case we might have to have some discussion about what that would look like, so.
Okay,
I move that we accept the voluntary renewal.
Second.
okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the panel has made the decision to accept the voluntary non-renewal of Covenant Keepers. Do we need to discuss next steps now?
Have you all received the voting sheet?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
Can you, if you have the voting sheets, can you just write your notes in as you usually would, and then give the feedback to the parties? Does the new panel member have the voting sheet?
yes.
I don't have
Yeah.
the voting sheet. I'll make a note if that's okay.
Okay.
Okey-dokey.
We may be working on two different Google Sheets here. I don't know where Ms. McLaughlin is, but I think there's,
Yeah.
yeah, we've got A1 Covenant Keepers and then A3. Yeah, we've got two different Google Sheets. I'm gonna go ahead and ask the panel, go ahead and relay their information, and we'll have to transfer all of this, but it'll
Yes.
be on public record.
We
so.
can, yeah, we can make sure that we get it all in the same document.
Okay.
I apologize for the issue.
Okay, all right, so I'll go ahead and let each panel member state their reasons for their vote. And so what we do is you just, Mr. Baldwin, is just tell how you voted and what your reason is.
Let us go first and put him on the end, that way.
That's true, that's true. I'll let Dr. Williams read his first.
Okay. Due to the withdrawal of the application to renew by Friendship, there is not a renewal application before the panel. I should have started off by saying I voted for the motion. And the reason I voted for the motion is due to the withdrawal of the application to renew by Friendship, there is not a renewal application before the panel.
Okay, Dr. Kramers?
I voted for the motion, renewing the application, renewal application is withdrawn, making this a voluntary non-renewal.
Okay. Mr. Baldwin?
I voted for the motion to not renew the application.
Okay. So for the reasons stated, okay. Mr. Rogers?
I voted for the motion because Friendship pulled their application for renewal.
Okay. Ms. Newton?
I voted for the motion. There's no willing and eligible applicant to accept transition of the existing charter.
Okay. Mr. Wilson?
I voted for the motion to accept City of Fire's non-renewal at its own request.
Okay. Okay, and is there any other decisions that the department needs to make at this time? Or not the department, the panel needs to consider at this time?
No, ma'am. So, this is all laid out in section 7 of the charter school rules for your own, if you want to go and review it later. But basically, no later than 15 days after this panel voted to non-renew or accepted a voluntary non-renewal, it lays out the duties of the department to begin the dissolution of the charter. The State Board of Education will review this at its next meeting, but these directions in the charter rules do begin 15 days from today. So we'll start doing that and working towards the dissolution of the charter.
I would like to make a recommendation that Friendship and ADE start working today about getting that resolved, so we have all that together by the time the state board comes together.
Good.
So I'd like to get an accounting of the reconciliation of all the state funds, all the federal funds, everything that we've gotten going up to now. Go ahead and get that started today.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we will move on to the next item on our action agenda, which is a request for open enrollment charter school, an amendment for eSTEM public charter schools. Mr. Ballard, you're recognized.
Reginald Ballard, Arkansas Department of Education. The request for open enrollment charter school amendment for eSTEM public charter schools. On December 10, 2007, the State Board of Education approved the application for eSTEM public charter schools. The charter is approved to serve students in grades K through 12 with a maximum enrollment of 3,844. Representatives of eSTEM public charter schools are appearing before the charter authorizing panel to request an amendment of their current charter.
Okay. Would all representatives of the charter and anyone speaking in opposition please stand to receive the oath? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. You may come forward, and if you'll state your name for the record, you will be recognized.
John Bacon, Chief Executive Officer for eSTEM Public Charter School. I'll be brief. As you all know, the last few months, a lot of work has been done in transitioning charter waivers from the old accreditation standards to the new standards. Really appreciate the work you all have done. I know eSTEM's name has appeared twice before you, October and December. It was brought to our attention that we needed to come one more time because there were several areas from our original waivers that were granted where maybe we had a waiver from the accreditation standards but needed waivers from state law and ADE rules just to complete and fully effectuate the waivers. So what you have are 4 areas where these are all waiver areas we've held since December of 2007. We're not asking for any changes to that, just trying to clean up based on guidance we received from ADE that needed to be done.
Okay. And you did say all of these were ones that you've held?
These are all
Since the
areas where we
inception.
have
Okay.
had waivers from the beginning.
Okay. All right, panel members, as you look over these, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. I would just like to ask if anyone from the Department of Ed, has there been anything, any of our department folks that need to clarify, or I think Ms. Hyde has worked with our standards and system support team.
Mary Claire Hyde, Arkansas Department of Education. What Dr. Bacon said is exactly right. These, when ESIM and I and the charter unit were working through the standards for accreditation, transfer from the old to the new, as a lot of other schools and districts have been in this position where we noticed that waivers were not fully effectuated. We reviewed these with them and actually made the recommendations that they needed to request these waivers, either because the waiver that they had was for an old law that had since moved places, changing where it was in the Arkansas Code, or because they just didn't have all of the provisions. But we did work with them to make sure all of the services are being provided and that kids are receiving the instruction. It's just in a way that doesn't necessarily align with exactly what the law or the rule says. But I don't think anyone has concerns.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no questions at this time, I would entertain a motion.
Move that we approve the amendment request.
A second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second that we approve the amendment request. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much, and we will record our decision. This would be A4 on the Google Sheets.
I know, they did put the motion. Put the motions. Who made the second?
Newton. I got it.
She's second.
Okay, we'll go ahead and state our reasons. Mr. Wilson?
Madam Chairman, I voted for the motion so that East End would conform its waivers to maintain its current excellent program.
Okay,
I voted for the motion with the explanation of continuation of the requested waivers assist the charter in continuity and consistency.
okay. Mr. Rogers?
I voted for, I have no concerns with their amendment request.
Okay. Dr. Williams?
Voted for the motion. This fully effectuate the waivers requested.
Okay. Dr. Kramers?
I voted for the motion to satisfy waivers for the new state standards.
Okay. And Mr. Baldwin?
I voted for the motion. The waivers appear appropriately requested and proper.
Okay. All right, we are moving on to the next action item, which is item number 6. And this is a review hearing for Capital City Lighthouse Academy. Mr. Ballard, you are recognized to update us on our task here.
All right, Reginald Ballard, Arkansas Department of Education. On October 15, 2014, the State Board of Education approved the application for Capital City Lighthouse Academy. The charter is approved to serve students in grades K through 12, currently serving grades K through 8, with a maximum enrollment of 750. The charter authorizing panel requested representatives of the charter appear before the panel to address the charter's academic performance. Representatives of Capital City Lighthouse Academy are appearing before the charter authorizing panel to address the requested issues.
Okay. Will all representatives of the charter and anyone speaking in opposition please stand to receive the oath? Okay, if you'll raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, and if we can have our presenters come forward. Okay, and you'll have 20 minutes to make your presentation, and anyone else who's going to be presenting with you, if you all will state your name and title for the record, I'll recognize you.
Yes, Good morning, I'm Lanisha Roberts, the Executive Director for Lighthouse Charter Schools here in Arkansas. Capital City opened in 2015, and they currently serve grades K through 8 with 220 scholars. We have 2 academies at Capital City, the K-6 and the 7-8. And we offer a universal feeding program, and our school is a recipient of the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Grant. And like the local surrounding schools, we serve a high-need and low-income population of diverse students.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Shannon, and I am the principal at Capital City Lighthouse Charter School. I came to be a part of the Lighthouse family in April of 2018. I'm in my 17th year of education, and I'm going to be honest with you, this is the first time that I really feel like I can make an impact. Many of our scholars, if you look at our educational model, we know that we're rooted in a strong curriculum and instructional resources that are aligned with the Common Core, that are aligned with the Common Core state standards, but also a big portion of our instruction comes from our social development. Many of our scholars come to us from other schools that they weren't successful at. For whatever reason, some need mental health issues, they have mental health issues, behavioral issues, academic issues. So we are really encompassing the whole body of the child whenever they come to us. When I came in April, I fell in love with these scholars. We immediately had a bond. They were looking for someone to come in, to take their side, to be their leader, and I feel like that I have been led to be here at Capital City. We also have, you see the different portions of our social development, and then our arts infusion, where we incorporate the daily art instruction to bring our educational opportunities for our children to life. At Lighthouse Academies, we believe in setting the stage for academic outcomes by making sure that our scholars' social, emotional health is at the forefront of our minds. We've incorporated multiple staff members who are trained in restorative approaches, implement daily rituals, and we partner with behavioral health service providers. Now, this is a slide that we are very, very proud of. At Lighthouse, we not only focus our time and energy on our general population, we hold ourselves highly accountable to the performance of our students with disabilities. Now, this slide represents the ACT Aspire growth for our students with disabilities, and the data shows a higher than average growth in both English language arts and math for that population. We attribute that growth to intentional communication between our special education teachers as well as our general education teachers. We have constant parent communication, and we have intensive focus on those academic deficits for those scholars.
Good morning. My name is John Osborne. I serve as the math curriculum specialist for Capital City Lighthouse Schools. Today, I would like to talk to you about the progress that our scholars have shown in ELA math on 2 different assessments. I will be talking about the NWA national assessment that the scholars take, which is part of our charter goals. I will also be talking to you a little bit today about the ACT Aspire summative assessment, which is related to the state test, which is what we want to see in terms of the state of Arkansas, seeing how our students are progressing. The first thing I'd like to point out on the NWA national test is that the way NWA recognizes growth from a scholar is in 1 academic year, the test expects a scholar to grow by 1 full year. However, we push our scholars to exceed this goal, and we set our goal for the scholars at 1.25 years. That is part of our charter for math and ELA. For math and reading, we expect our scholars to grow by 1.25 year in just 1 full academic year. The first slide you'll see relates to ELA on the ACT Aspire summative test, the state test. So the question you would want to pose here is, in ELA, will scholars grow if they stay with us? Our data shows that yes, over the 3 years since we have been open, scholars are growing and improving their scores on the ELA ACT Aspire summative test. If you look here, you'll see that on average, we are growing by 4.5 scale points on the ELA ACT Aspire summative test over the 3-year span. The chart above shows you a cohort. For example, in 2016, our 3rd grade scholars averaged a 413 scale score on their ELA summative exam. As we progressed, that same 3rd grade cohort became 4th graders in 2017. Again, the blue column, they increased their scale score to 416. That same group, that same cohort, now 5th graders in 2018, again, the blue column, once again increased their ELA summative assessment score to 418, showing a clear progression of growth throughout the 3 years that they are with us at Capital City. We are now going to go back and talk a little bit about the NWEA national test. As you see here, we're talking about the reading growth scores on the NWEA, and you'll notice a clear trend of growth exceeding even the charter goal of 1.25 years. For the 2016 school year and the 2017 school year, our scholars exceeded not only 1 year of growth that NWEA sets forth, but also the 1.25 years that our charter has placed. You will notice there is a discrepancy in the data that is off trend, which we will discuss later. However, even the 3-year average shows us trending upward, very close to our charter goal, and far surpassing the 1-year growth expected by NWEA. We're now going to go back to the ACT Aspire, the Arkansas State test, where our focus on math. We just talked about ELA and reading. Now I want to discuss math. The question here is, will our math teachers get better at using our curriculum? As mentioned earlier, we are using the Eureka curriculum, which is Common Core standard, state standard based. Generally, it takes anywhere from 3 to 5 years for a new curriculum to become fully embedded and teachers and scholars to become very comfortable with it. The trend here shows that our teachers are improving at using the curriculum and teaching their grade level content. An example would be, we are not looking at cohorts, but think of it as in 2016, we have 3rd grade, 4th graders, and 5th graders. Those 3rd graders averaged a 410 on their ACT Aspire summative math test. In 2017, we got a new group of 3rd graders. This still the blue column, but a new group of scholars. This new group of scholars improved their score to 413 on the Math ACT Summative Aspire exam. Moving forward to 2018, and we're adding a grade each year. That's why we're increasing the columns. Going to the 2018 year, another new group of 3rd graders once again increased their scale score to 414, showing that our teachers are truly getting better at teaching with the Eureka curriculum and are in fact improving the ACT Aspire Math summative scale scores for all scholars. The last one, we'll go back to the NWEA. Again, NWEA math. Again, it sets the goal at 1 year. We push our scholars to exceed at 1.25 years. In one academic year, in the first 2 academic years, our scholars surpassed the NWEA goal as well as surpassing our charter goal. Once again, we see the same discrepancy as before, which we are going to address. But if we look at the 3-year average, the trend still close to our charter goal and still exceeding what's expected by NWEA, our students surpassing the 1-year growth and growing at 1.1 years.
Sarah Shannon, principal at Capital City. This is a slide that we're very proud of, I'm excited to share with you today 2 awards that our school has been given this school year by the University of Arkansas Office for Education Policy. We were awarded one of the best growth schools in ELA we were one of 10 schools in the state of Arkansas to receive this honor and ranked 2nd of 5 schools in the central region to receive this honor. We also were given the award for beating the odds in ELA for our low-income families that we serve. We were one of 10 schools in the state of Arkansas to receive this, and we were ranked 3rd of the 10 schools and ranked 1st, which we're very proud of, in the central region to receive this honor. And I'm proud today to have one of those dynamic teachers here with me today that's going to be speaking here in just a little bit to one of our other programs that we're doing here at Capital City. We are committed very strongly to partnering with our families and making sure that the needs of not just our scholars, but our families are also met. If you look at the growth trends here, we are currently excited to share with you a 92% parent satisfaction rating. So that shows me that our strong partnership together with our parents is having an impact, not just on our students, our families, our teachers, and then the community that we serve here in North Little Rock.
As you saw in previous slides, we did not meet our academic expectations in 2017 and 18. NWA MAP data revealed this to us early in the 2017-18 school year, that we were not on track to meet the expected growth and outcomes. We know that this was not okay, and this caused us to do some reflective thinking on our next steps. In 2017-18, we experienced some unique challenges. We had leadership and teacher change that happened mid-school year. As you know, leadership and teacher changes can be detrimental to the culture and academic outcomes of a school, and Capital City was a result of this type of impact. 2017-18 was not the norm for us and will not be a repeat year. We have stabilized the school leader, and teachers are showing commitment and growth in their learning to appropriately execute for our students. It is also important to know that it did not take the school report card grade for us to know that we had to make changes. As early as April of 2018, we began teacher training and a comprehensive analysis of data to determine professional learning needs of the staff. Some of the changes were immediate, and some were during the summer months due to budget implications. First and foremost, we knew we had to have teacher and leadership stability in order to get students back on track and to make up ground from where we lost this past year. And that we have now. Lastly, we knew that we had to double investment in our professional learning of the staff that was ongoing, and that we have now. The planning and research began last school year on the best program that will best serve our scholars. Our leadership team explored personalized learning and how it could best serve the students. And also, we looked at the required training that it would take for our staff. We needed a program that was not a one-size-fits-all. After attending professional development opportunities to further explore the possibilities of personalized learning, we then leveraged our partnership with APSRC to assist us with finding schools of successful implementation of personalized learning. They assisted us in setting up our on-site visit to observe, along with speaking to the teachers and the experiences with the implementation. The wow factor for me was hearing how the scholars took ownership of their learning, how they were being able to articulate what they learned, and the safe environment to learn that personalized learning welcomes. As a school, we began the application process and dialoguing with our assigned summit coach. We wanted to know what grades we should serve and if it was recommended that the most successful implementation. It was recommended to us that the most successful implementation would be to only target one grade the first year, and that we did. We identified our incoming sixth grade class based on their limited student engagement, motivation, and just their overall academic performance. Mrs. Shannon, the principal, will share more on the school's professional learning plan that was implemented for the 2018-19 school year. She will speak to the teacher supports and ongoing training being provided and embedded in the day-to-day school program. Mrs. Hart, our summit teacher, will speak on what is working, the implications of the summit program to date, student success, and the promising results we are seeing since the implementation.
From my first day of working at Capital City, I told my teachers we're all lifelong learners. If we don't ourselves understand that we always have room for improvement, how can we teach that to our scholars? So I talked to many of my teachers and said we're so blessed with the many opportunities that we have here at Capital City. We've partnered with APSRC. We have a district literacy and math specialist that come to our school at least twice a week They work one-on-one with teachers. We have meetings, we communicate with each other as we set goals, and then we follow up with those teachers. We also have above and beyond the core consultant, Ashley McDonald, who is here with us as well. She works with us on a weekly basis. We're in constant communication. And what I'm seeing now with my teachers is they're coming to me, they're coming to these consultants and saying, I want more. It's so rewarding to see these teachers saying, I need help. They're no longer hiding and saying, I got this. They're coming and saying, I need help, I need support, and we have that support for them. That is what is so exciting here at Capital City, that we have this going on. You can see from our extensive list that we have a strong support base locally, regionally, and nationally, that we can reach out to ask, hey, we need this. We need your help. We need your support. I've never once asked, I need support, and not had 5 people call me, text me, say, what can I do to help you and your teachers?
Good morning. Anita Hart McNair. I'm the 6th grade summit teacher, and I'm the Title I literacy interventionist. As previously stated by Ms. Roberts, at the end of the 2017-18 school year, Capital City staff was able to do some extensive research on project-based learning platforms and visit local schools to see firsthand the effects of this method of teaching has. The decision was made to implement Summit Learning in order to personalize student learning and to meet individual student needs. Summit, as I stated, is a personalized, individualized learning platform. Opposed to a student learning the concept of a skill, they're given the opportunity to learn the skill in a way that promotes them to create a project in accordance with that skill. For example, opposed to a student learning what a theme is, they're able to determine the theme of a novel that they've read, and then they're able to pitch a TV show that they've created that also encompasses that skill. Our students learning cognitive skills in this manner has allowed them to retain skills that translates across disciplines and subject areas. These skills acquired also correlate with the skills that are tested on the ACT Aspire, as well as the MAT test. Each student is able to receive individualized learning resources, allowing for differentiated learning in an inclusive learning environment. Because the students receiving this project-based learning are all on various levels and have different educational needs, the platform allows each student to receive activities, resources, assignments, and even tests that are all catered to their individual needs. One of the greatest assets that I've seen with the Summit platform so far is the sense of empowerment that it has given our students. Last year, the students in our 6th grade class were a challenging group of students, both academically as well as culturally. Many of these students were unmotivated and became academically stagnant. However, this year, they have already shown tremendous gains. This individualized learning platform has allowed the students an opportunity to take complete ownership of their learning and display a sense of pride in their learning experience that wasn't previously present. For example, students enter our classrooms each day, and now they set daily goals regarding what academic goal they're gonna work on. This agency has helped students stay self-motivated, it's improved their behavior, and all of our students are now engaged in their learning. Students have been able to acquire and utilize habits of success that have assisted them to push themselves. They now celebrate their own academic successes, their own social successes, and the successes of their peers. These are the same students that now request feedback on assignments and tests on weekends and even during Christmas break. Summit also encourages and promotes an environment that is advantageous for small group instruction, and this gives students an opportunity to receive direct instruction and assistance on their particular deficits. Significant growth for students in math and literacy have already been noted since implementation and can be attributed to several factors such as one-to-one technology, because each student has their own assigned Chromebook, so they have their own technology that's at their reach each day. There's also individualized and differentiated learning environment for each student, and each student is assigned a mentor that guides them socially as well as academically that they meet with on a weekly basis. Since implementation, Capital City has already noticed some significant gains in our scholars. In literacy, 76% of students have met their projected growth on the winter NWEA. On the ACT Aspire interim math assessments, the 6th grade scholars we had 42% meeting benchmark, which is compared to less than 10% on the previous assessment. Pending final analysis of student achievement data, Capital City intends to expand the participation in grades 4 through 8 during the 2019-20 school year.
Lastly, we have given you our school improvement goals. In our first goal, we are working on increasing academic achievement in reading, and you can see in the bulleted points some of the things that we're doing, but we're implementing small group instruction in all of our literacy classrooms throughout the day, as well as...
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the 20 minutes is up.
Okay.
We will see, is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Okay, no one is here. You have a remaining 5 minutes, so you can finish up if you would like, if that's, you want to finish up the presentation. We'll do additional 5 minutes.
Okay. As I was saying, we implement small group instruction in all of our literacy classrooms, K-8, as well as implementing daily structured RTI for kindergarten through 8th grade students. We also implement all RISE components that are embedded in grades K through 6. Our second goal, we're focusing on increasing academic achievement in math. And one of the strongest pieces at this point is we're starting an after-school tutoring program that we have almost 80 scholars that have committed, and we have other parents that are asking us, can my other children come and attend this structured program 3 days a week with us? And then our final goal is increasing our academic achievement in the area of science. We are implementing Project Lead the Way curriculum, and we've also increased minutes in the science classes, in the science block in our upper academy. So I want to thank you all for your time today and appreciate you listening to our school.
While we are not pleased yet with our current results, we do believe that we have taken the appropriate measures and steps to ensure that our outcomes are not a replica of 2017-18. Our current student data has shown from fall to winter NWEA math testing that we and our scholars are truly growing. We look forward to sharing these growth performance highlights with you at our renewal hearing in the near future. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move to panel questions, and I'll start here with Dr. Williams.
Okay. You know, the excellent presentation. And I think the big takeaway for me is that things are moving in the right direction. And, excuse me, I do want to just state the obvious now is the letter grades for the lower elementary and the upper elementary. And the lower elementary is an F, and the upper grades is a D. But I appreciate the presentation, and it looks like you all are moving in the right direction. And I'm looking to see what the next trend would be. And I guess the only other piece that I made a note of that really caught my attention, and you talked about the leadership change and the teacher change, because that year was just almost, it was, you know, if you look at data, it just kind of, it's a wake-up call. Could you give me a little bit more information on how that directly affected the kids? Was it just a lack of leadership working with the teachers to meet the needs of the kids, or how just give me a little bit more about that.
So as it relates to the teacher, she was one of our high performing teachers the year before, and she affected 3rd and 4th grade math and science. So that was a huge loss, but she was terminally ill.
Yes.
She tried to make it, but she missed a numerous amount of days until she ended up resigning by January. As for the leadership change, our principal that we had in place, she actually did not come back after Christmas break. She was our second principal, if you will, just to say she was our second principal, and the kids had formed a bond with her, loved her, and these kids really thrive on relationships as well as the parents. So she sent an email and did not return after Christmas break. So that was 2 major people in our school that left. So it really affected the kids. The teachers felt like, is anyone gonna stay, right? We need a leader that's gonna stay and persist. And so that put us in a position just to have a really rough year as it relates to staff morale as well as student relationships and trust, so.
And while you're talking about staffing, if I could go ahead and ask a question related to that. I noticed in your data for 17-18 that like 90-something% of your teachers were inexperienced teachers, according to the data that we had. So that would be teachers who have no more than 3 years of experience. Can you talk a little bit about what your workforce looks like this year? Have you seen a change? Were you able to retain teachers, and
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about
Yes,
that?
ma'am. We were able to retain teachers. Of course, Ms. Shannon had the opportunity, we brought her in April as a school leader,
April of last year?
2018. So
Okay.
yes, she was able to spend the rest of the year with us because we go into June. So she had opportunity to observe the staff that, she wanted to keep, and we allowed her that opportunity. We didn't lose many teachers, maybe 2 to 3, but in our testing grades, we were able to keep the majority of our teachers. So the staff retention is better. We do have some committee staff. We have some that's been there since the school opened. But it was a novice staff, yes.
Okay. Dr. Kramers, questions?
I commend you on the growth recognition from University of Arkansas on the ELA. What % of your students are the ELA students?
I'm going to try to talk. My name is Amanda Crowder. I'm the Regional Academic Director. I'm not sure I understand your question. Are you asking?
What % of your student body are ELA students, where you were recognized for the growth, student growth with
So
the
that was for our upper academy for our 7th grade.
Okay,
The ELA would be the English Language
Language
Arts,
Arts.
so.
okay.
Yeah, it's not,
Are you asking about EL,
Yeah.
English
No.
Language Learners?
Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
no.
Okay.
So that's where you received the recognition for
Yes,
student
for
growth
English
in
language
that area.
arts.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you for
ma'am.
clarifying that for me. And on the reports, apologies, when you presented the data on growth, the slide 9, and this is just more for looking at data and how data is presented, but on slide 9, it's presented as student growth, and I'm just wondering if you're presenting that as percentage points or just a static, flat point growth.
So that's a good question. The NWEA, what they do is in the fall, the students will take the test, and then it'll give them a projected growth based on where they were. So an example would be, I don't know if this is accurate, a student scores a 180, now they're projected to score a 190 in the spring. If they score a 195, they have grown by a year and a half of what is expected. So it's more, it would really be a percentage. This number would relate to a percentage of what they were expected to grow. It would really read 150% or just 1.5 years.
Okay, so you mentioned the student growth, and I'm curious because the trend is actually decreasing each year. So it's 1.5, 1.4, 0.7, and you said you were going to come back later and clarify some discrepancy in the data, and I don't know if you spoke about that.
Yes, ma'am. So the discrepancies in the 2017-2018 year were sort of what Mrs. Roberts spoke to
Okay.
in terms of the 3rd and 4th grade teachers. Those
okay.
greatly affected those scores. So that whole turnaround, we kind of see the trend for the 2017-2018 year that affected the scholars as well as their scores on the NWEA ACT Aspire.
Okay, so I guess where I'm just disconnecting, and I apologize for continuing to just ask for clarification. You're saying growth, but in that chart, to me, it looks like each year there's a decrease. Even though the average is still 1.2 overall growth of 1.2 years, the actual trend per year is declining.
Yes, ma'am. So I do see what you're saying because it goes 1.5, 1.4. My thought when I look at this is simply, even though it does go down from 2015, 2016 to 2016, 2017, the fact that they're still growing by more than 1.25 years doesn't concern me as much as they did drop a little bit. So I see they grew by 1.5 years, and then they grew by 1.4 years, which still isn't what we want. We want well past even our 1.25 goal. But the fact to me is they still did surpass their charter goal, which I'm happy about, even if it was a slight decrease. I'm confident that our trend will continue with the 1.2, 1.3 average above our charter goal.
So like for this next, let's say for 18-19, then you have to have an increase from the 0.7, then up to the 1.25 to meet your goal, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's what would
Which
be
is a little
needed.
bit more of a jump
Yes.
than the average that you're
Yes, ma'am.
presenting. Okay, so that's just kind of the presentation of data as clarification. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I'm Sarah Gallagher. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for Lighthouse Academies. I just wanted to clarify that we don't necessarily look at the 1.5 and a 1.4 as a decline. NWEA states the way this works for them is that each child would be expected to have a 1.0, right? Anything above that is considered great progress. We hold ourselves to a higher standard, so we're looking for a year and a quarter or more. So rather than necessarily looking at 1.5 and 1.4 as a trend line, I would state that those are exceeding our goal and exceeding our goal again, right? And overall in the 3 years, just barely missing our goal. In 17-18, we have addressed that. We did not meet the goal in that year. We expect of ourselves that this current school year, we will again exceed our goal of 1.25. Thank you.
If I might ask, because you all are showing the NWEA data here, in terms of growth in the presentation, you didn't talk about the growth as far as the state accountability growth. And there is a disconnect between positive data trend with NWEA and then the state growth, which shows that on average your students are not meeting the growth that would be expected of them. And it's not necessarily measuring a year's worth of growth, but it's what each student acting as their own control would be expected to meet. So can you talk a little bit about where those disconnects might be? Because that, I think, is something we need to feel confident that your school has a grasp of and is looking at. So the fact that that wasn't mentioned at all is a little of concern.
Yes, thank you for that question. So that is something that we are looking at. One of the areas that we have looked at is special education, and you will find in our special education subset, we are actually past the 80% or 80 points on ESSA in both our lower academy and then our upper academy as well. I'm going to pass it to my local colleagues here to talk a little bit about our work and understanding the state accountability.
So one of the things we looked at is NWA has done a linkage study as to how students' performance on NWA translates to ACT Aspire. One of the things that we have brought forth to our schools this year is that for NWA, a student has to be in the 70th percentile, period, to be able to show growth and proficiency on our readiness on the ACT Aspire. That's very high, because NWA puts it at 50th. So that's something that we're translating because we didn't see that amount of growth to translate on the ACT Aspire. It's 70th for ELA and 65th for math.
And you mentioned your winter map results, and that you would discuss it at a later time. Can you just give me a quick snapshot of what you see from the winter map results as far as the trajectory or the projection?
We're seeing at a different trend than we did 17 and 18.
Okay.
We're seeing the growth of the students meeting the 70th percentile or being within the range, because they'll give you 68 to,
Right.
The range of the percentile, increasing in math and ELA. And students moving out of the lowest quartile is changing at Capital City.
What kind of percent change? Like 10% more? I mean, do you have an idea? If you don't know, then
I don't know it off the top
Okay,
of my head
that's
with the
fine.
different schools, but
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
they're showing the most.
that's fine if you don't.
Okay.
I don't want to surprise you with the question that.
And I also want to address some of your concerns about, the growth as it relates to state testing. We do have, we find ourselves in an area of it's high mobility in North Little Rock. We had 106 new students last year out of 202. So if that gives you any kind of picture of, some back and forth in between the schools that we get, we do have that as well. So some of our students that tested, probably 40 out of 99 were brand new. And this is just off the top of my head, giving you I don't know the exact, but we do get a lot of new students, and we do deal with very low reading levels as well. So that's another issue, and that's the one thing that we really push, like embedding RISE into the ELA class where all the components are there. It's scheduled out when they do each component of the RISE. So we are seeing some gains in students reading more.
And I couldn't help but notice on his computer, Mr. Rogers has data pulled up on reading levels, I think. So did you want to ask any questions related to that?
No, that was just my concern is when we were looking at the growth that you have on and that's why I appreciate the questions that they were asking, because the lower academy right now and the ESSA score is only at 14%. And so I appreciate that, why I had that pulled up, and then also had your goal one that you have to actually to work on the Arkansas RISE, because that's my biggest concern with the lower academy is 14% reading at grade level, because if they continue staying at only 14% reading at grade level, then when you go to your upper, there's not going to be any improvement there. And that's what was jumping out at me because I looked at that reading growth and I'm looking at the S score and they're not saying the same thing. So that's a little confusing to me there.
Let me ask a non-educator question, and I apologize for asking that, but I'm curious, when you received these grades, was it a surprise to get those grades, or did you see that, you could see it coming that way?
No, sir, it was definitely not a surprise. We looked at the fall and winter NWEA data, and we knew that it was trending not in the right direction. So we
now
absolutely.
You can see it trending the other way.
Yes, that's why I said we started planning in April for 1920 because we knew student investment, even on the testing, was very low because of the reading. So, no surprise.
Ms. Newton, do you have any questions? Mr. Wilson? Okay. I'll go back to this end of the table. Any additional questions for them? Okay. One other thing that I want to mention, and this is, I think, just to be sure, because I heard a couple of different times, it's very important that in instruction that we are teaching the academic standards, the Arkansas academic standards, and I heard reference to Common Core state standards. And I want to make sure that the standards to which you are teaching are the Arkansas academic standards, and you have those clear. Okay. And sometimes when you're newer, I understand, if you've been in a place where Common Core was still taught, so I want to make sure that was clear. Okay. So panel, any discussion prior to making it a motion? All right. I think we had a thorough presentation. Seems like our questions have been answered. So Ms. Hyde, are there any remaining issues or anyone signed up for public comment that would need to speak? And I guess you need to give us some guidance on what it is we would actually be doing here.
Mary Claire Hyatt, Arkansas Department of Education. To my knowledge, no one has signed up for a public comment, and I don't believe there are any remaining issues. So since you called Capital City and Lighthouse before you, kind of to give this review, the things that you can do are make motions to place a school on probation, to add some sort of reporting, or any other type of directive. You can make motions to that effect. You can do nothing. You can, other than accept this report if you don't wish to add any of that stuff. And of course, there's revocation. It doesn't sound like you're there, but just to be thorough in the options.
Okay. All right, so panel, if, is there, unless there are other desires, one of the motions could be to accept the report or to, ask for any additional information if you feel the need to do so. The data are updated and we will have results from this 18-19 school year, hopefully early in the fall, Ms. Kaufman. Accountability update, in the fall. So there will be, and when are you actually up for renewal?
June 3rd, 2020.
Okay, so we would be seeing them again in about a year.
Okay.
Anyway.
That's my question.
Okay. All right, so is there anyone who would like to make a motion at this time?
Move we accept the report, knowing that they'll be back here in December. I think that's good thing.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to accept the report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, if you will record your responses on the Google Doc. And we appreciate you coming today and providing us with this update, and wish you all the best in the rest of the school year, and a very laser-like focus on those things that you're doing.
And I just wanted to give you kind of a time update. It is 10:30, so
Okay.
I voted for the motion. I was impressed with the growth, recent growth. We all vote for each other. She usually votes for me.
Are we still on? Okay. If we want to just start with Mr. Wilson and go down the row, you can just give a quick update on your vote.
I voted for the motion. I was impressed with the awards from university. I thought that was a good indication of good growth.
I voted for the motion with the reason being the school seems focused and directed toward improving student performance.
Mr. Rogers?
I voted to accept the motion to accept the report, knowing that there's going to be an opportunity for him to come back next year and show the growth in reading at grade level.
Okay. Dr. Williams?
I support the motion. Academics are trending in the right direction. I am looking forward to receiving an update this fall.
Dr. Kramers?
I voted to approve the motion to accept the report with knowledge that significant positive academic trends should be evident in December.
Mr. Baldwin?
Thank you. I voted to accept the motion. It appears you all understand the challenges and have a plan to improve those results.
Okay. All right, thank you, panel. At this time, if we could have a motion to recess until 1 o'clock.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we will reconvene at 1.
As long as we get to eat lunch.
Am I good? Okay. We're going to resume our meeting. We have one agenda item left, and this is a review hearing for Blytheville New Tech High School. And we will recognize Mr. Ballard to put this action item before us.
Arkansas Department of Education. Number 7 is a review hearing for Blytheville New Tech High School. On January 14, 2013, the State Board of Education approved the application for Blytheville New Tech High School. The charter is approved to serve students in grades 9 through 12 with a maximum enrollment of 1,000. The charter authorizing panel requested representatives of the charter appear before the panel to address the charter's academic performance. Representatives of Blytheville New Tech High School are appearing before the charter authorizing panel to address the requested issues.
Okay, and for clarification before we get started, they also have an amendment request, is that correct? Okay, yes, so we will essentially look at two things. I just want to make sure that I don't mess this up as we get going. We would need to take action on their amendment request, but that amendment request will be heard as part of their response to concerns, is that correct?
Mary Claire Hyde, Arkansas Department of Education. So you do need to vote on the amendment request separately from any motion you may or may not make about the presentation. I don't know whether they plan to present the amendment request as part of this presentation. It's certainly fine for them to do that, or they could present it separately, just kind of how they want to do it. But just make sure when you vote, that you vote on the amendment request, and then if you have additional motions, to do them separately.
Okay, very good, thank you for clarifying. Okay, so will all representatives of the charter and anyone speaking in opposition please stand to receive the oath? If you'll raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, thank you. And we will go ahead and get started with the presentation. And so I will just ask those of you presenting to state your name and title for the record, and you're recognized. So we can begin at this time. We'll have 20 minutes.
Thank you. I won't use the whole 20 minutes. I think I'll share it. But good afternoon, and thank you very much for allowing us to come and speak before you today. My name is Bobby Ashley. I'm the superintendent of Blythe Public Schools. I've been superintendent since July 1. Prior to that, I had been high school principal for 9 years. So I made the move on July the 1st and took over the superintendent position. I want to start off today in sharing what Blythe High School New Tech, their vision is. Our vision is to develop learners who will show agency, demonstrate the ability to communicate, collaborate, think critically, and transition into the college and career of their choice. I brought up some key words in our vision, and that is communicate, collaborate, think critically. And that is was our whole purpose when we started New Tech, was to concentrate on those things, because our students, like any other student leaving any other school, though we think those things are critical as far as when they leave our doors. Bible High School New Tech, their core beliefs are strategies that BHS New Tech uses benefit our students. And we feel very strongly in that the strategies that we're teaching daily and have been ever since we've been a charter New Tech school, that we concentrate on the strategies that we are teaching our students. Also, we believe that relationships are essential. Not only are they essential, but we also think they're extremely critical as far as moving forward and us teaching our students. Teamwork is also a huge key in our core beliefs as far as being a New Tech school. We also believe that partnering with the community is something that we do and have been doing and put a lot more emphasis on it in the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 years, as far as partnering with the community and getting their voice and their input as far as what we're about. I want to tell you just a little bit about Blythe High School New Tech in Blythe. I know most of you probably are very familiar with Blythe, where we're at. We're, of course, in the northeast corner of Arkansas, and we're in the Delta, and we are obviously in a poverty area, as well as other schools are along the Delta. Blythe High School is about 600 students. We have 9 through 12. We're around 85% African American, and we're 100% free lunch and breakfast. And also there's a lot of meals that we provide for after school programs also. We not only believe that educating our students, but also we believe that they nutritionally they need to be ready to learn in the mornings when we begin to teach them. The survey that our students do, they do them a couple times a year, and it's through the New Tech organization, the New Tech model that we use. And what we've found through our survey, and they do, like I said, they do them a couple times a year, is that if you'll notice, our students, year in, year out, they either agree or strongly agree that they're very proud of the education that they're getting from Blythe, or when they leave Blythe. They're very, very proud of that. And our survey tells us that. They also, year in, year out, also agree and strongly agree that they're ready for the next stage or the next step in their life. Because we, not only do we educate our students, obviously, but we're bought into when they this F happened under my leadership as far as being the high school principal at that time. I can tell you this here, the day, like I said, July the 2nd actually was my first day of being superintendent, because that was a Monday. First thing I had done was schedule meetings all day long with different departments and different groups. And my first meeting was at 8:30 that morning. And about 8:35 is when Ms. Cook, who will be talking to you here in a little bit, she laid down the test scores she had printed them out. They were given to us that day. And it literally made me sick for me to look and see that we had received an F. So I was going to not only now talk about the F that we had received as me being principal that Friday, but now this Monday's rolled around, and now this is an F that we're on. But it is something, board, that we do on. We're not going to shy away from it. You're going to be hearing here in just a little bit things that we've put in place that we think still will work, but they may need tweaked a little bit. But also things that we're going to be doing. We did hire, obviously, someone to replace me, who we're very proud of, and he'll get to speak to you here in a little bit. But the F does not define us, but the F, it does say a lot. So there's work to be done, and I can assure you, as superintendent, we're going to put everything we have into changing that F. So I'll close it in there with that.
Good morning. I'm Sally Cook. I'm the curriculum director for the district. And I want to speak just briefly to a question that was posed in the letter that we got regarding this hearing. And it was around our knowledge of ESSA and how we got those scores, and that information. And I want to share that those barriers are not excuses for us, but we have to acknowledge the barriers in order to address them and make adjustments within those things that are in front of us. As we looked deeply at our ESSA scores and our report, we found several barriers, not things that had been completely hidden, but that we hadn't addressed completely. One of those was including specifically the fact that the systems that we had in place that were needed to track each indicator were not fully in place. Those things were there, we were aware, but we were not completely tracking all of those things. And so we know that could have improved our scores. We've already made those adjustments. One big area of concern was just that core instructional gap that has to happen when you get the scores that we got to receive that F. And that occurs partially with the barrier of the high teacher turnover, which has been something that we've dealt with, and we'll obviously be able to expand upon that during the question session. But we know that there is a need to do a lot more to provide that foundational content support for all of those teachers. And you're going to see a lot of those things, how we're going to address those barriers as the rest of this presentation goes on, and we can address them more individually as we speak later.
Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Swenson. I'm the new principal of Blytheville High School. This will be my first year at Blytheville High School. I'm coming to you previously from Cross County High School as the assistant principal and the director of college and career access there, which is also a new tech school, Cross County High School. I want to start out today with a quote, one of my favorite quotes. Every system is perfectly designed to achieve exactly the results that it gets. And so I want, as we go into this presentation, and as owning myself as the leader of the building that last year had an F, I want us to understand that we understand that the reason we got or achieved these results is because of our systems, and the way that we're going to move forward is the refinement of those systems. And so you're going to hear about that in our presentation today. You know, my wife and I are originally from Wisconsin, and we were heading back for Christmas, and we were telling a story. I don't remember the story. Don't tell my wife I wasn't listening. I promise she's not watching the live stream. But she made a comment there, something along the lines of, what can you do? That phrase we often hear, what can we do, with the shrug of the shoulders. And so I wonder sometimes, a board like yourself, if you think that's maybe what we're saying or thinking as a school. We do have a school where we have high amounts of situations of poverty, and we might just be saying, what can we do? But I want to promise you that what we're actually doing is saying, what can we do? And even more than that,
we're saying, what can we do with a real sense of urgency? Because we realize that there needs to be a heavy amount of urgency to make sure our students are being served each and every day, and that we don't see results like the one we did on this report card. Additionally, I want to make it clear that as a school, we're not in the business of throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping that some noodles will stick, and that we have a process for our refinement, and I'm going to talk more about that process here in a second. And so we are a new tech school. That means a variety of things. One of the things that it means, though, is that we're a learning organization first and foremost, that growth and learning is at the heart of everything we do, along with our purpose. And so if you look at this graphic from the New Tech Network, you can see that the purpose is at the center of everything that we do. And you heard from Mr. Ashley, our purpose really being our vision. Further, we use the cycle of inquiry with the New Tech Network, starting with data, moving into analysis, and then into strategy with a singular focus around the things that we're trying to improve. And so data, analysis, strategy, quick sprints. We're not waiting to the end of the school year to make these adjustments. This is something that's happening throughout the school year. And we're also learning by doing. And so sometimes you can fall in that analysis paralysis where you're just diving into everything. We're really moving in by trying some things and then refining throughout time. And so, again, not throwing spaghetti at a wall, I want to talk about the three main focuses that we've been working on. And these are things that we've either enhanced or that we've added as something new. The first one is Tier 1 instruction, improving in Tier 1 instruction. The second one is a focus on college and career, especially around access. And the third one is a culture of excellence and collaboration. And I'd like to dive into each of those. And so our first focus is to improve Tier 1 instruction through instructional coaching using the test rubric and the 6 A's rubric for high quality project design. And so we're doing that in a variety of ways, but the main way that we're doing it is through setting up a system, sustainable system, to make sure that new teachers and even some other teachers are being supported this year currently. And so if you look at the model we're currently using, we have the superintendent who's supporting the principal, and then the principal who's supporting the instructional facilitators and the APs, and weekly regular conversations around instruction. This is one way to build relationships, but another way to just talk about what's going on in classrooms. And then the assistant principals and the IFs are supporting 2 classroom teachers or more directly. And what we're talking about there is not just they support them and check in every once in a while. We're talking about weekly observations with weekly support happening, a post-conference after that. And so I might go into a classroom and notice that there's not a scaffolding of questions. And so I might think about some strategies or resources or do a model for that teacher and then come in next week and see what they've accomplished and then move on to the next thing. And myself as the principal, I'm supporting 2 teachers directly that way as well, besides all the walkthroughs and normal things that principals and APs do. This is something we've added extra. And we're looking for next year to add a mentor teacher program where teachers are given a little bit of extra time in their day that are really performing well to support other classroom teachers, and they would get support directly from the instructional facilitators. So it makes Blytheville High School a place where everybody is growing all the time, and that's our hope. The second thing we want to do is we want to build sustainable systems to ensure that all students have choices throughout their lives. College, career, and when we say college, we're talking 2-year, 4-year vocational, the military, whatever students decide they want to do, but we want them to have a portfolio of options that they can open up upon graduation so they can then pick which one they want to go towards. We do that through the Aware, Eligible, and Prepared framework provided by the New Tech Network. Aware, making sure kids know what's out there, providing them the experiences and opportunities to see what's out there in the world. Eligible, making sure they don't miss those deadlines or those pieces that they're going to need to do what they want after high school. And then Prepared, which is really that focus again on Tier 1 instruction to make sure they're ready to engage in those next steps, is what we mean by college and career ready. The third thing is that we want to develop and cultivate a culture of collaboration and excellence where we understand that our student culture will be defined by our adult culture. So first and foremost, 90% of our teachers are in daily collaborations with other teachers in similar content. And weekly, they're meeting with instructional facilitators for new learning. And so that could be around planning or Tier 1 instruction. We have built a long-range plan, and teachers are getting that new learning each week in something we call Learn and Grow, very similar to other PLC models. The second thing, and this is one thing I really wanted to do in the first semester as the principal, is we had a lot of committees and teams. I really wanted us to define how those committees and teams work together and what is the purpose of each of those committees and teams. And so that collaboration piece is that it's not just a singular leader making decisions, We make them together in a lot of ways. And so how do they work together, and how do we make sure we're all driving towards our vision? And so we came up with our organizational graphic to really define what that looks like for us. The last way, and this is something that's unique to being a New Tech school, is that we're driving kids towards excellence in those soft skills. And so these are school-wide learning outcomes: knowledge and thinking, agency, collaboration, written communication, oral communication. And for each of these, there's a grade-banded rubric that teachers can use, and students are assessed on every rubric in every class. And so it's not just the speech teacher's job to give feedback on oral communication, or it's not just the English teacher's job to assign writing. That's happening across the board at Blytheville High School and at a good New Tech school. And so Tier 1 instruction, college and career, and a culture of excellence and collaboration is what we think is going to take us to the next level. But we're not leaving out the fact that Ms. Cook mentioned that we weren't doing as much as we could to track our ESSA indicators. And so a check mark here, these are our different ESSA indicators, indicates that we're currently developing or have developed a way for us to track our ESSA indicators, not just at the end of the school year, but throughout the year. Because we know you can improve upon what you can't measure. And so we are working on building those systems, or have built the systems for many of them, so we can track where our students are at and where we're at as a school. And then at this time, if it's okay with the panel, I do want to pass it over to our instructional facilitator, Robin Sneed, and she's going to present our new goals.
Please identify yourself for the record.
I'm Robin Sneed, and I am the instructional facilitator for Blytheville High School. Mr. Swenson spoke earlier to a sense of urgency. So what can we do? Our newly formed instructional support team works in a continuous cycle of inquiry so that we can test fast, fail fast, and adjust fast, because our students deserve an equitable education. When Sally and I came before the board last December, we heard what Dr. Hernandez said about our goals being too lofty. So we come before you today to present our revised goals. For the second semester of last year, we were in a state of transition. We spent the first semester of this school year working with our new superintendent and new principal to revise goals based upon your feedback and feedback from our stakeholders. Our first three goals are aligned to our first focus, Tier 1 instruction. We want to narrow the achievement gap in the areas of ELA, math, and science by improving our ELA and math scores by at least 3 percentage points, and our science scores by at least 2 percentage points each year until BHS New Tech students are scoring at or above state average. For our second focus, college and career readiness, we have 2 goals. One, to increase our graduation rate by 1 percentage point each year until the school reaches the state average. The second, to increase enrollment in 2 four-year technical or military by 2 percentage points each year. Our last goal is related to our third focus, culture of excellence and collaboration. We feel that school connectedness is important, culture is important, and relationships matter. So we want to use the New Tech Network School Success Rubric and the Student School Culture Survey that Mr. Ashley presented earlier to measure our school culture. We believe that these goals are directly aligned to our focuses and to our vision, and that they will get us to the next level. At this time, I will turn it over to our school board president, Ms. Toby Johnson.
Good afternoon. I'm Toby Johnson, and I'm school board president. While I'm very, very proud of this position, the pride I feel in the fact that I served the Blytheville School District for 27 years as a classroom teacher gives me even more pride than the position I serve now. I knew that when I retired, and believe me, folks, if you haven't been there yet, you'll know when it's time. You'll know. When I retired, I knew I couldn't walk away from the school. This was such a big part of my life. I couldn't walk away from my kids, and I couldn't walk away from the school, so that's why I'm here now. I'd like to also introduce in the audience Mr. Desmond Hammett. He is here as school board member.
And I just wanted to say, we've reached the end of the 20-minute presentation. I don't think, if there's nobody here in opposition, then you do have an additional 5 minutes, so you're fine there. I just wanted to make sure if there were others that you knew you were into your last 5 minutes, so, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'd like to introduce two of our board members that are here in support, Mr. Desmond Hammett, and in the back, Ms. Barbara Wells. I've listened to our board actually for the last 2 days, practicing what they were going to say to you and knowing the passion that they have. Please understand, as a board member, as all of them in leadership position, we're extremely, extremely disappointed in our test score. I look back when I was a teacher 10 years ago, we didn't have new tech. We didn't have those things. And I was a traditional teacher. Had we have had the things that new tech stands for, we wouldn't be standing here before you now. I think this is what they're focusing on, and that's what we're focusing on as a board. We believe wholeheartedly in the new tech program. I am so impressed with what our leaders are doing, what our teachers are doing, what our administrators are doing, what our students are doing. They're working towards their future, and that's what we want for our kids. As board, we believe in our people. We believe that all of us are accountable for those scores, not just the kids. With the dedication that we've got through Blytheville High School, we're going to succeed. We're going to succeed. We're just kind of like an elevator that's on the bottom floor. It's got nowhere to go but up. Thank you.
You have about 3 minutes left if y'all want to close with any statements, or if you're ready, we'll go ahead and start questions. Okay, thank you all for your presentation. All right, so panel, we'll go ahead and I will start this time with Mr. Rogers to see if you want to start with any questions.
Okay. So, I guess where I want to start is with the reading at grade level. I mean, it's at 9.5, but you're at 82% on time for credits. So I'm a little confused how you can have kids at 82% on time for credits, but they're only reading at only 10%, less than 10% of your school is at grading level. The other thing that I have concerns about is the waivers that you have for professional development, teacher licensure, guidance and counseling, and planning periods. I'd like to know how you are using those waivers, because if we're going the wrong way in the school and you have those waivers, if there was a revocation of the new tech school, you'd still be a high school, but you just wouldn't have the waivers. And would that help go? So that's what I'm kind of going through in my mind right now.
In regard to the waivers first, since that's the last thing you said, that's the first thing on my mind. I will tell you that many of the things that we have used those waivers for have helped promote what we felt like our kids in Blytheville, Arkansas needed. For instance, the counselor. It's not that we don't have counselor or we don't have certified counselor, but we wanted to take, at the time that we asked for it, a very strong career coach who could come in and work one-on-one with every student, help them see and believe in who they are and where they could go, and move them forward towards those dreams, help them build those dreams, help guide them through scholarship applications, ACT prep, helping them know, starting in 9th grade, where is it that I need to go, what do I need to do? So we reconfigured what that would look like. We still have other licensed counselors on staff, but the career coach aspect was so strong, and it came in through some of the things that had happened that we already had a career coach, and so that's where those waivers come in. As far as the teachers go, I will tell you that we face the same problem that states across the United States face, and that's the teacher shortage. With the waivers and the ability to hire people who have a bachelor's degree and some background in that education, we've been able to take people that are good, solid people from our community that have an investment in our kids, that have an investment in Blytheville, Arkansas, that know our kids and understand their backgrounds, who will come and who will hopefully train and stay with us because of that waiver. That probably is one of the most critical pieces for us because our teacher turnover has been so large. We've lost 14 to 16 a year in that high school regularly, a high of 23 that left us one year. And so if you can imagine over time, over the last 10 years, losing that many people, we're building from the foundation up. So we're reteaching. We're actually teaching teachers how to manage a classroom. We're teaching the pedagogy. We're teaching them. We're their ed prep program in addition to supporting them in the very difficult journey of being a first-year teacher in a school district. So we're doing all of those kinds of things. So those waivers have allowed us to be choosy about who we pick, and not just someone who happened to have a degree but we knew absolutely could not fit in Blytheville, Arkansas, and would not relate to our students, would not relate to our community, and probably would not succeed in our building. So they have been very critical.
So what's your turnover now?
Our turnover this last year, we absorbed 12 teachers at the high school. We have declined enrollment, but our turnover district-wide has been reduced dramatically. I think we had a total in the district of 20 teachers. In fact, we did not have to turn over, in your building, I want to ask Mr. Ashley how many you turned over?
Last 2 years, 13 teachers we absorbed.
Yes, we absorbed 13, so we're not having to rehire like we were. We're not having to retrain.
And then about the waiver of professional development?
On the waiver on professional development, I can address that very quickly. That is just to offer us other options in the way that we do our professional learning. And we don't call it professional development, we call it professional learning, because every time we do that, it's an opportunity for people to learn. We actually, even though the state reduced the required amount to 36, we provide on contract up to the time to up to 60 hours in-house, because we feel like the needs of those that teach in our district, and especially at our high school, are so much greater, and especially with the younger people that are coming in that don't have that background, we have to provide them with all those things I mentioned earlier. So we need more time. We're actually probably providing more. In fact, I know we are. We're providing up to 60 hours on campus of support for those people. Just a wide variety of things that we're doing with them. And then the other question was?
Well, it's just, I mean, and because I guess I'm still confused. Because I hear, I mean, you're doing all this, but it's still, when I look at the reading at grade level,
It's disheartening,
that's
and it's
horrible.
not just disheartening, it's embarrassing. But I will say this, as the district curriculum person, we knew when we saw our scores a few years ago, and they weren't good then, we knew that we had a problem, and it wasn't starting at 9th grade. So what I can tell you that we have done, and I know this is about Blytheville High School and their charter, but we have stopped and we've gone down to kindergarten, and we've applied for the Solution Tree PLC grant. We have begun a systems approach in our district, and we have revamped our curriculum. We're working towards that guaranteed viable curriculum from kindergarten all the way up. We're filling in those gaps. So our primary school, K1 and 2, are participating actively with that PLC grant. So they're completely revamping the standards, and they as a group are coming together and collaborating on what they know are essential standards. We're working on the learning targets. I'm taking that information to the other buildings as well, so it's not in isolation just because we have that grant in that one building. Everyone's embraced that need. We know that the things that have to happen to improve the core instruction are really covered in so many of the things that the Department of Ed has provided. In fact, I could go through so many different pieces of support, and that may be something you want at a different point, but that the department is offering. But it's those kinds of things, providing a wraparound approach, providing critical reading classes to support those kids who are not reading well, helping them get those skills and intervention time even up through the high school level, because we know they're not there. We also know there's an issue with motivation with taking the test, and one of the areas that we discussed in our presentation was test fatigue and students who were just to the point where it wasn't important to them. And so we have to make I guess, another effort at making sure that the students understand the importance of these exams. They may score well and they're getting ACT scores, they're getting college entrance exams, and you can look at some of our data around how many of our kids who are getting the ACT scores to enter college. Well, that doesn't make sense that they would still be at that grade level basic reading if they could get those other things. So a lot of it, we feel like, is just that understanding of the importance of that test to our school and our district sometimes for our kids, helping them believe in that purpose.
If I can ask a couple of follow-up questions to things you said.
Yes.
Do you give interim assessments at the high school?
We are working with the NWEA MAP system this year for our interim assessments. I know we spoke to this in the past, that we were testing our kids to death. Our kids really did have test fatigue. We were guilty of taking all of the advice that someone would give us, and instead of picking and choosing the best piece, we took a little of this and a little of that, and it fatigued our teachers and our students. So right now we have streamlined that, and that's one thing we've done this year, is that's NWEA, and they've already received one set of results. In November, we'll test again the 28th of this month, and we're hoping to be able to see some improvement within that time frame.
So the results should be showing you some projections for
Yes,
the ACT or SAT?
Yes, and it's very much more aligned to NWEA. We feel like it's very much more aligned to the ACT and Aspire.
But you've only you have not yet given the second time, second assessment.
We have not given
is
the
that
second
correct?
assessment, so we don't
So
have
that'll
any
be
baseline
something
data for that.
that would give you some good information.
That's
Okay.
correct.
You talked a lot about your staffing in the core instruction, and just looking back at some of your workforce data, I mean, your attrition rate in 17-18 was a little over 50%, I think, is what it was showing on My School Info. So that's a big chunk, and realizing then that you are relying heavily on your waivers as far as those teachers that you employ. And as you even said, in many cases, you become their preparation program plus their support system plus their development into stronger teachers.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if the partnership with New Tech Network and thinking about just the foundational core instruction pieces, is that partnership with New Tech, is that something that stretches the capacity of your teachers? Is that something that pulls away a focus maybe from the more foundational things? Because another thought that came to my mind when Mr. Rogers was asking some questions was around the reading. Yes. And the requirement for all of our secondary teachers to have the awareness in the science of reading. Yes. And so just thinking through all of that, where's that foundational approach going to come as you really get back to that core instruction?
Two pieces on that, and Matt, you may want to jump in, but I will say that with the science of reading, obviously that online for most of our teachers at the high school is the awareness piece, and they have begun those modules. We truly believe that piece across the state is going to improve reading scores all the way up from kindergarten through 12th grade, and that piece is vital for our teachers to understand that they too are part of that process. So we'll be guiding them, and I'm going to be assisting them with those modules, even though they have that on hand, but I'll be able to take what I'm learning with the K2 Rise, the 3-6 Rise, and all of the other things to come up and support those teachers with that. I will also say that the New Tech piece itself, and I'm going to let Mr. Swenson, because he's got such a strong background in New Tech, speak to this part, but I will tell you that when we are looking at, and we got our high reliability schools books this week, and so we started digging in as a team to those, looking at what we see in high reliability schools, looking at what we see in the professional learning community grant, that overarching support piece, New Tech has been there for us on that. It has helped us create a collaborative culture. It has helped us have that focus on learning, that results orientation. One thing that we've seen, though, as we talked about Mr. Ashley and what he came in and brought for us through his principalship, was providing the culture and the foundation to have our kids want to be at school, to provide that opportunity for them to feel safe in that environment, to feel like this is a place where I can succeed. Somebody cares about me here. We want this to happen. And so his entire focus was setting up those systems, setting the foundation in place. And now Mr. Swenson comes in with this very strong background in new tech and also in academics. And so I'm going to let him speak a little bit to that piece because I think he can share some of those things.
Dr. Pfeffer, could I add another question, and he might answer all of them?
Yes.
As far as looking back at the new tech model and rethinking, if you could go back, would you still buy into this new tech philosophy or their program of conversion as it relates to another approach for the students based on the difficulties they're having? So I'm wondering if new tech was actually a better fit than something else would have been. That's just curiosity. And the other side of it is I'd like to know if the new tech company or the new tech entity, are there any sanctions that they would put in place based on the struggles that you're having and the grade that you have been presented with through the ESSA? And so is it any point in time that they, just like we would have some questions and have an accounting, is it new tech's responsibility at any point or the expectation that they would come in and say, you know, you're either doing fine, you're making good progress, or this just doesn't seem to be the fit? Because as I understand it, there's a significant investment of dollars on the district's part to get into the new tech system and get your school equipped and technology equipped and all of that. So that could be possibly some of the same.
Well, you have to let me know if I answer all the questions or if I miss one. I can speak to a couple different things. The first thing is I am a new tech guy. That's why I chose to come to this school. So when you think about the new tech network, it's really the 4 design pillars. So it's that technology piece that enables kids to do things. It's the outcomes that matter when I talk about those school-wide learning outcomes. It's the teaching that engages, which is kind of to your question. And then a culture that empowers. And so while there is a large upstart cost to new tech, the actual continuation of new tech is much less for a district, and we were just diving into that. What it was for Blythe, I knew what it was for Cross County. But to get up and going with one-to-one and those different pieces, it costs a good amount, but then it becomes less as we're in something called continuation as a school, which just means we get support from new tech, but we don't have someone coming, those 10 days that you might need when you first start a school or start transitioning. The second thing is new tech is different in the sense that new tech doesn't run our school, Blytheville School District does. We just partner with new tech and work with them. And so historically speaking, new tech, as far as I know, has never told a district you can no longer be part of the network. There's a strong focus of equity in the new tech network, and so they wouldn't be satisfied with these results just as much as we are, because it's great that kids can give a presentation, but they also got to read, write, think, do math. Like, these things really, really matter. And so they wouldn't be satisfied with the results. We're lucky to have a really good relationship with the New Tech Network, which is we've used this last semester as really a way for us to do some resetting and some basic practice in the network when you think about those 4 design pillars. And then additionally, when it comes to core practice, that's why we have the instructional support team. That's why I formed that team this year. Because if you think about TESS or TAP or what Danielson kind of wrote, when you think about PBL, you're just thinking about the high end of really great instruction. And so we've got to scaffold you into that, and we have been doing that with our teachers. So nothing, when you're doing PBL, and I was a pretty good PBL practitioner, I trained teachers in project-based learning, you still have to have great questioning and academic feedback. You still have to have a great assessment. You still have to know how to write a great objective. These things don't go away because of project-based learning. I think it just more enhances what we're already doing. And when we think about a student population, with many of our students coming from situations of poverty or maybe having some apathy towards school, the reason we love New Tech is because we've got to do the things that really matter, but we've also got to make it really matter to our kids. And so what the network asks us to do is to connect the schoolwork to the community, to connect the schoolwork to business and industry, and to connect our schoolwork to the broader life that they want to build for themselves. So that's the goal, and I think sometimes it can get bogged down as something that takes a ton of energy, but I think what actually happens in a really great New Tech school is it just kind of, there's a synergy around the best practice and the next practice.
I hope that answered some of your questions. Sometimes I have a way about me of I get passionate. Thank you.
Well, I guess Mr. Ashley would be the person to answer whether you do it again.
I'm sorry, ask that
The
again.
question of whether or not you start down this road again, or would you choose to look at some alternative? Is this getting you to where you want to go as fast as you want to get there?
Yes, ma'am, because it covers so many things other than, I know, just the ELF, but the things that it does for our kids and our kids when they're walking out the door, you know, obviously the ability to collaborate, to build agency. But to answer your question, yes, ma'am, we would. Now, obviously, I wasn't the superintendent. I was part of that decision because I was the high school principal at the time. I was not the final decision as far as making that, but yes, ma'am, if I had been superintendent then, yes, ma'am, I would have still invested in it. And let me say this here, the startup funds for those, there was money also that helped us through the New Tech grant that we got in the initial part, but obviously the cost now is minimal compared to what it was to start up because of obviously all the purchasing of the computers and things like that. But it is a process that is we're still moving forward. And let me say this here too. I know Mr. Swenson is probably not going to toot his horn as much as I would, and of course I find myself, you know, in a difficult situation here because of being the high school principal and talking about the ELF and that, but now I'm the superintendent of the school with the ELF. But hiring someone with a New Tech background to come to your school is we were quite lucky in that because of they're not just a million New Tech schools out there, but Mr. Swenson's connections in the New Tech network is nationwide, and the things that he's going to be able to do with under his leadership has definitely sold me, and it's also sold our committee here that's with us today. So.
Okay.
If I may, I'd like to also address the question. I was a teacher in the classroom when we began the New Tech model. And the difference that I saw in my students that as 9th graders versus where they ended up as 12th graders, the first group that went all the way through the New Tech model and walked across that stage, and the confidence that they had in themselves, I would absolutely do it all over again. Before that 2006, that first graduating class of New Tech, our students were getting around $900,000, and we really celebrated the year. They got about $1 million worth of scholarship offers. The first graduating class received $2.1 million in scholarships, the first graduating New Tech class. Our second was about $2.3 million in scholarship offers. And last year, our students with fewer students in that graduating class, about 30 fewer than the previous year, received over $4 million in scholarship offers. We have been told, the industry that told us, that gave an industry scholarship, told us not to tell their name, but they did let us know that our students, when they came in for the interviews that they did for area students for these scholarships, our students interviewed better than all of the surrounding districts. So we are very proud of our students, and we are very proud of our model. I also wanted to address the reading. Our students do have a reading deficit, and we are addressing that. As Sally spoke, we are looking at, or we are all participating in the science of reading on ideas. But not only that, our teachers have collaboration every day.
And we're working through the modules together, through collaboration, and we're pausing and talking about, so how can we take this and apply it in our classrooms? And so it's not just a, listen to it on ideas and take the quiz. It's how are we going to apply it? And we're holding each other accountable for that.
I'm going to go ahead and I've got some other panel members with some questions. So if we can, and then we can kind of follow back up. Dr. Williams, what's your question?
Excuse me. What's the I hear a disconnect, and I can't quite put my finger on it. What year are we in it with New Tech High? 6th year. And as I listen to you talk about the scholarships that the students receiving, I'm not connecting that with the grade that I see.
Okay, I'm sorry. So we started with New Tech with I was talking about the 9th grade that started, and that had New Tech for 4 years.
Okay.
So they first graduated in 2016. That was the first class that we had with 4 years of New Tech.
Okay. So, in looking at the letter grade for the last 2 years, and I listened to the New Tech process, and it's a great process. I give you that. But what I'm not hearing is what's going on in the classroom. You know, that's what a rubber. I'm a former math teacher too. Okay, so I'm hearing all the other things to get them ready to go out to interview well and do some other things and so forth. But the grades are results of teaching and learning. So what's happening in the classroom to improve the teaching and learning process?
Okay, so first I'd like to talk about, Sally mentioned earlier that barrier of the teacher turnover. So I said I was one of the founding New Tech teachers. So when I look back at that first picture of all of us who went to teacher residency the year we were planning to become a New Tech school, and look at the number of people who are still there, there are 3, myself included, and I get to teach 1 class. So we are teaching teachers how to be teachers, we're teaching classroom management, and we're teaching the New Tech model at the same time. So are we where we want to be with implementation? We're not, but we're getting there.
What about
with that collaboration that we built into the schedule to help support those new teachers, we're getting there.
Okay. What about the teaching of the curriculum itself?
So all of our projects are based on the standards. We start with the standards. It's basic backwards lesson design, and Mr. Swinson could probably answer this better than I can, but teachers start with a project planning toolkit with the standards, and then we look at what authentic application can students do or perform in order to be able to show us that they meet these standards. And we launch, instead of lecture, quiz, lecture, quiz, lecture, quiz, possibly a project at the end, the students start out knowing, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to take what we're learning and apply it to a real world situation. But Mr. Swinson explains this so much better than I can.
And I think
I can show you, but I can't explain it.
I think Dr. Williams is asking kind of the same line of questioning that I did. When you have the rate of turnover, when you have all those new teachers who are learning how to teach, trying to teach them how to teach content well based on project-based learning, that can be challenging in itself. So I think that the assurances we need is that capacity there, is that support there, and as you alluded to before, that's kind of how you've set up the model to have mentor teachers working with new teachers. But again, I think that's just where we're having some discomfort as to, with a focus on New Tech, given your teaching workforce, how viable is it that it's going to be successful in the everyday classroom core instruction? So I think that's where our 2 concerns really are prevalent. Do you want to add on that question, or kind of?
I think it really kind of goes along with it. I'm kind of going back through the whole history kind of piece of it. So authorized in 2013, academic distress 2015. So within 2 years there was academic distress, and then removed from academic distress in 2017, and now back after they removed So over the 6 years, they've already been on academic distress. They're back in that same situation at this point. So the strategies with this model, I think it kind of begs the question of, even though the model, whether we're saying the model nationwide is good, not our thing to say necessarily, but is it the right model for the students they're serving? And over a 6-year period, with being already on academic distress before and now again in that situation, it seems like it may not be the right model for the students they're serving.
Okay, I would like to hear her answer the question that,
Good afternoon. My name's Casey DeFord, and I'm district support. One thing I did want to allude to was the support that our teachers are getting, knowing that many of them are non-traditional pathway or first-year teachers. So Robin did speak about the experience that they have in collaboration, but along with that, once a week, they have something on Mondays called Learn and Grow. In the Learn and Grow time that they have, that's when they're going through the unpacking of standards, and the theme of the first semester was planning. So how are we planning units? How are we understanding what we're teaching kids so that we know what to expect out of them? But with that, the things such as classroom management, there is Monday PD that's offered every single week, and that's based off of Teach Like a Champion techniques, which we know will work in any classroom setting, whether it be PBL, PRBL, or a traditional classroom setting. And through that, I work with teachers individually and in groups to actually role play and go through scenarios. With that, we go into teachers' classrooms knowing our teachers of high need support so that they're not just getting observed on the observation schedule that exists, they're getting observed sometimes daily, sometimes multiple times per week, or once a week, and they're getting that immediate feedback and modeling so that they know how to immediately improve instruction, because we know that's what's best for kids. With that, we did talk about position absorption, but why teachers are leaving the district. We do exit surveys to see what are we missing? Why are people leaving Blytheville, Arkansas? And what we noticed in our results was many people are retiring, so they're going out of the profession, hopefully not because of their experience, but just because of age. And then they're going on to, we do have Teach for America was a large population of our teacher group, Arkansas Teaching Corps, so they are going to those post-grad opportunities. But we're not losing many teachers to neighboring school districts. And because of the absorption, we haven't had to hire as many new teachers, giving us the ability to work with the instructional team model, which you saw, to really target our high-need teachers weekly so that they're growing at a rapid rate, because we know that's what students need.
Okay, do you have a question?
Yes. A little bit different question. Looking at your revised goals for ELA and math, you're saying you're going to increase that performance by 3% and hit the state average at a certain point in time, and in science it's 2%. I was curious how you came up with those percentages, and specifically, what are you going to do different? Because those are fairly high percentages on an annual basis. What are you going to do different to do that, to accomplish that? Yes, sir. I'm actually going to turn it to Robin Sneed and Matthew Swenson to answer those two questions for you.
First, I just want to, Blackwell High School and New Tech School is not on academic distress, so I just wanted to get that on the record. We did get an F, but we're not designated by AD as on
No,
academic
that
distress.
shows that it was back, you appeared before the board, and you had to give a progress report in September of 15, and removed from academic distress in February of 2017, according to the background information.
Okay, yeah. When we looked at and when we were developing these goals, we were using our NWA data as a way for us to kind of gauge what we think we can move our students. We knew this was the first assessment. We knew what we saw in the ACT Aspire Summative. And we also know that, I think someone mentioned, we're at a level where we're not where we want to be. We can't go anywhere but up at this point. And so we thought those percentages were reasonable, especially compared to our old goals. And so 2 to 3%, we think that's something we can do for our kids. And I think the best way we're going to do it is, and we know this from the research, is the teacher in the classroom is what matters. And so we're doing that through, and I hate to keep coming back to it, but the instructional support team, because we want teachers to stay because they want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And we think, or I think, teachers will stay if they're growing. And I know that's why I stayed past my commitment at Cross County. I was a Teach for America teacher myself, and that's why I'm here at Blytheville High School, and I think that's true for most educators. We want to grow. And so I think that's it, folks. If we can build this system of growth where everyone's growing, this culture of growth, we can do it. And
And I have to disagree respectfully, though I have a lot of respect for the panel. I don't think new tech is the problem. I think we do have to be careful that we're not overextending ourselves, but our kids need a personalized approach to learning. Our kids need to be engaged in the content, and if we can do this right, that's how we're gonna do it. And I wasn't here the last 6 years when they were new tech, so I can't speak to those 6 years, but I can speak to the building I'm gonna walk back in tomorrow morning, and I can say we're moving in the right direction. I know words is what you guys get all the time from everybody, but I can tell you from someone who's done this at Cross County, I feel like we're moving in the right direction, but we didn't get here in 6 months, and it's not gonna, it's not gonna come out in 6 months, and it's gonna take time. But we got a good community and a good group of kids, and teachers who care, and leaders who are willing to work their butts off. And so that was not, I know your question was about the tests, and I went off, but
Well, I actually think I understand. When I look at your old goals and I look at your new goals are more realistic than your old goals, for sure. I mean, that's so you're moving in the right direction.
we feel like we can accomplish those goals every single year.
Here's what my concern is still, though. Have you all looked at augmented instruction for students? When you talk about having students you're using the method, or looking at it from, we want to give the students real-world experience of how to use math, for example. But if they don't have the basic math that they need to have, it's going to be hard for them to see themselves doing it in the real world. So there is an inherent disconnect unless they have a certain level of math to be able to engage at that level. I'm concerned about that basic level of math as a math teacher. I know they have to have something to work with, to build off of. I'm not sure, as I hear you talk about the teachers and so forth, that's good. You're preparing the teachers to teach the math. But where are the kids with their math?
So we have been giving pre and post assessments, and those things don't go away just because we're doing project-based and problem-based learning. And one thing that the math department really talked about last year was the foundational skills. They're not the only ones, but the math department specifically. And so we have identified these are the foundational skills that our students are missing, and they're direct teaching that alongside of teaching the grade level content. And also to speak to your question about can we get there, and how are we going to get there? We have identified specific targeted students in for each assessment, looking at their assessment scores, and those that were very close last year and very close on the NWEA, not just using the old data but new data as well, and said, okay, so for example in reading, we had 30 students last year to meet the readiness benchmark. This year, based on the number of students that we currently have, we need to meet our percentage goal, we need 40 students. So that's 10 additional students. So we've looked at those that are close, and we've targeted more than 10, but we have targeted students and said if these can make it. And so we're looking specifically at their reports from NWEA and the skills that they're missing, and we're making sure that we are including that intervention, tier 2 intervention within the classroom.
And I think it would be important to note here, though, that under ESSA, moving all students is the goal. I mean, and for too long under No Child Left Behind, we lived in the world of bubble kids where we counted them and just wanted to move this group right here. I want to go on record as saying the goal should be we're going to move all kids from where they are to that next level. Under the ESSA school index, you're rewarded for moving all kids to whatever level, but taking caution not to identify a group that's going to get the intervention. It has to be about moving all kids. So I think.
And we absolutely believe that, and we are giving all students, we're looking at group level. So we can pull group interventions within NWEA, and we can pull individual interventions as well. So we have targeted those students that are close to the readiness benchmark, but we're also
And I think you're going to have a valuable tool when you give that second interim assessment, where those students are going to be able to see a projection as far as where they would likely be on a ACT Aspire or even an ACT or an SAT. That provides them with some really good information to take ownership of that. So it ought to be about every student being able to see where they are and starting to think through where they would be. So I think
All of our students we know what their projected score should be, and our students will receive that projected score, and then a mini data conference with their teacher, and possibly with me or Casey as well, individually, to look at, here's where I'm at, here's where I want to be next time, so what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And put the responsibility on the student as well.
And I think everything you all are describing, and you're describing so many positive things, and some of the things I'm going through my mind is, what would you not do or not be able to do if you were not a conversion charter? And we probably discussed this before, but I mean, when you really look at it and you look at the 6 years in the history, I think back in 2013, is that right, Dr. Kramers, when you were first? I think there was a time when, you know, you couldn't do some of the things you're doing without flexibility of being a district conversion charter. What would you do differently if you were not?
I think one of the things that we see that we would not be able to do would be the innovative part, and knowing that we have that option to innovate, to do some of the types of things that we hope as Mr. Swenson comes in, that he will help us align. As we said, Mr. Ashley built that foundation with that culture, and we're ready to go to the next level now with a different leader as Mr. Ashley assumes the leadership up above. So the things that our kids deserve in Blytheville, the things that will engage our student population that might not happen in a traditional setting without those options. We feel like there are some things out there that we want to keep open in front of us, especially some of the things that we talked about around, you know, the specific waivers around the counselors and things like that, that we have. And I think that piece in itself is critical. We realize there are a lot of things that we probably could do, but for our kids, I will tell you this, the belief in themselves and the belief in who Blytheville High School, or what Blytheville High School is and who they are as part of Blytheville High School, if this was removed, it's a personal thing for them. It's a personal thing for our community, and for them to feel like they didn't have that option of being in a charter. We have the KIPS school next door. We have school choice, where we've had a lot of flight from our district to several districts that are close by of many of our kids. It would be one more thing that we would not be able to hold our kids, not hold them captive, but hold their attention in the belief that, hey, you can be right here and you too can succeed. You right here in this town have all the options you need, and you don't need to get on a bus and ride someplace else. You can do it right here. So I think almost it's the feeling, the option to innovate, the pride that comes with that is going to be a big piece of that. In that, and I wanted Ms. DeFore to explain also, if you have a moment, just a little bit more about the targeting of those students with the NWEA. And I will say this: if we have the opportunity to expand our work with the Solution Tree at our high school, we feel like that piece of identifying those essential standards and that deep learning and work on the core instruction would also be another way that we could really support the foundational work with our teachers that would take that work to another level. And so that's something we're looking at very heavily, whether I have to recreate it myself without help, or whether we have the benefit of being able to work through them as well through a grant.
Just briefly, I wanted to discuss, we did switch to NWEA this year, and part of that was because like we talked about, we do have newer teachers, and data is another thing that teachers get to learn in the profession. So with NWEA being more aligned to ACT Aspire and the ACT, our teachers are able to access data, and data that's not just saying, oh, you're proficient or you're ready, but specific skill-based data. What skills are they missing? What skills are they mastering?
From there, it actually gives you a platform to group your students and see who needs intervention when. Oftentimes we think very big picture about intervention when really, if you as your teacher know what skills students are struggling with, intervention can happen within the classroom setting too. You don't need a specific time to do it. Even though we have it, you can embed it into your classroom instruction. And then lastly, it guides us. So the resources that it's giving, the guides it's giving to make it user-friendly for not just students, but their parents as well as teachers who are new to the profession, it kind of gives us three things that really drive that. When we spoke to students and told them, you know, this test is gonna help predict what you're gonna get on the ACT, immediately the investment was higher, more so than it was when we were using Renaissance Learning. So we're noticing just more investment because it's a more real world thing for them. The results are tangible and people can understand them at an easier rate than having to dissect the data and then go through what that entire process is also.
And I will just add that one last comment. The investment in the ACT, not just the ACT Aspire. Our kids have still not made that connection from the ACT Aspire and the importance of what that levelized and each year that what that means compared to the actual ACT walking them into college. And that's where we're still having a disconnect with some of our students. So we've got to make them understand the importance of that, the exams all the way through, and not just the one that gives them an entrance into a college career.
You start with me.
Okay. Dr. Kramers.
So we know the reading scores are a significant challenge. Are your students able to have a single class period during the day with just English or English language without being embedded, without being blended with another subject?
I'd say for 85% of our students, that's true, that there will be an English class standalone. And for many of our 9th and 10th graders, they're additionally taking a critical reading class if they showed on that ACT Aspire summative that they are not reading close to grade level. And so we've selected those students to be part of that critical reading class. I would argue, though, as someone who taught a co-taught English class for a number of years, I actually would argue that it's more beneficial to the students because of the amount of time. I taught a social studies English class with 11th grade Americans, we called it 11th grade American Studies. And I was able to spend an hour and a half as the English teacher with my kids because remember, in PBL, one piece of content is the car and the other is the driver. And so everything we did maybe was through the lens of social studies, but we were writing and reading way more than you would in 47 minutes in a standalone English class. And so, as someone who's done it, I think that hour and a half, if it's done right and done at a high quality, can be a game changer for kids. I mean, my kids were writing every day research papers multiple times a quarter. We read multiple novels, articles. I mean, you can just do so much more with that additional time.
Okay. Do you have additional questions on this side? Okay, additional questions? Mr. Wilson?
Yes, perhaps one of you all can educate me on this. You indicated that there were some NWEA tests that were done or finished in November, and I think those are treated as interim assessments. Is that the right term? What can you tell yet now today whether those that testing or those assessments showed any growth over the previous period or pointed you in the right direction of where you think you need to go?
So, we have not done.
Can you
the
make
growth.
sure you're in the microphone, please?
Sorry. The growth assessment will be on January 28th. So we'll be able to see growth at that time. We do have a correlation between or a correlation chart between how they're performing on the NWEA and how they performed on the ACT. And so we can see, what we are seeing is that the NWEA is much more aligned to their performance than even the ACT Aspire interim assessments were. And I believe that's because the NWEA actually gets up to a DOK 3.
So in January, when the second interim testing is done, you have a comparison between that and November.
Yes, yes.
answer your question?
Well, yeah, I understand the comparison, but it doesn't tell us where we're headed or going. It might at the end of January.
Yeah.
Not yet.
They
Not
just
yet.
don't, they've not administered two different the second assessment so far this year.
Because the assessment is new to us, and we didn't get to give the first assessment until November, because of transitioning from the old assessment to the new assessment.
Mr. Rogers, do you have a question?
Yeah, I got two more. Mr. Ashley, I have I have two more. Well, I think two more questions or two more challenges. So, since 2016, FY 2016, you've lost 238 students, and in that same time, you've seen your unrestricted fund balance decline from 5.7 to projected closing at 1.5 this year. So not only do you have a struggling new tech school, but you're also declining in fund balance and losing students. So with the challenges of having this new tech school on you with the low reading score and the F grade, also the financial responsibility, how can you assure me that you're going to get to the success of new tech where it needs to be with these other challenges going on?
Well, the other challenges obviously is something that we've been dealing with now for years because of declining enrollment. The declining balance is something, like I said, just since July have I been privy to the in-depth knowledge of all the funds and where they've been. But that's been our biggest problem as far as loss of students. I know I've been there, this is my 10th year, and district-wise, we've lost 1,050 kids just in 10 years that I've been there. So, you know, you're gonna see a decline in our balances and our money because of funding, obviously.
And I guess that's part of my concern is that this school's got, obviously, you've got challenges going on there that you need to address those challenges. But how, and I guess I'm worried about meeting the overall needs of the entire school district as well as this school when you're losing kids and fund balance.
On
So-
the financial end of it, I can say this here, what we're doing is very closely monitoring our monies by the fact of how many teachers that we have, or we're not gonna be overstaffed. That is something that I've brought in, wait a second.
I was just gonna say, you've asked several times regarding the new tech part of it. If new tech went away, we're talking about maybe $30,000 in support that we're getting, which is such a.
And I wasn't doing it as new tech going away, I'm just
What
saying,
is, you know,
but
that's
I'm,
not the impact financially, it's not the new tech part that's impacting us financially, I guess is what I want to do to make clear that
but there's obviously some things gonna have to go with new tech. You're gonna have to use your teachers pays to try to get teachers to go there to stay there. You're gonna have to look at some kind of financial to get them to stay, as well as getting them to buy into the new tech method. You have all these different challenges is what all I'm trying to say is we've already listed several challenges that you are having with new tech. On top of now, you're losing students with the financial situation. So I'm just struggling.
very well. I think it's very, very realistic line of reasoning. My thought around the new tech piece itself is if it's $30,000, that's not even a salary for one teacher. So that one thing, having their support as a network is probably not the thing that's going to move us fiscally one way or the other. And even to support it, the network, the technology piece is something that we would have to have just for the state assessments, regardless of whether we were new tech. So I guess that, I just wanted to clarify that, but I do understand your line of questioning on that.
Like just this past year, we paid for it out of our 1003 grant, and of course, we had to deplete that amount, and then of course, the rest of it we would be paying out of Title I. But that is money that's gonna be allotted for it to be able to, I don't wanna use the word survive, because it's a very viable model that we're using in the district. I guess I'm trying to tie in kind of the.
And I guess that's where I'm struggling too, is how are you going to, and I'm the 30, I'm not, but give the resources to your high school as well as to your other schools, because your other schools have a D at the middle school too. And so you've got to work on that one too, because the reading isn't much better at that one. I think it was 25% reading at grade level there. So you're having a whole lot of different things go on with the school district, as well as the new tech that you've got going on here. And I'm not trying to beat up saying you need to get away. I'm just saying that there's a lot of challenges that you're looking at. And then when I look at financially the situation you're having, I'm just wondering how you're going to juggle all of it together, tie it all together, wherever you want, however metaphor you want to use. But
Well, I mean, it's what we do yearly is we look at our budget. I mean, it's not anything different than we would do if we didn't have it, because we financially budget the money that we know we're gonna get, and then we allot it out to the programs that we have in place. And of course, New Tech is one of those programs. It is, I mean, when we're dealing with our full budget, I look at that as kind of a drop in the bucket as far as what we pay for it, and to be a member of, or use the New Tech model.
And I will add, just for your clarification.
Can you speak in the microphone?
Yes. I'll just add, the only reason I'm jumping in on that at all is that my history with our former superintendent, I know that we've come here regularly and asked for fiscal advice and actually had all of our books laid open and said, here's where we are. What do you think? And so, Mr. Ashley, that was one of the very first things that he did when he came as the new superintendent, is say, here we are. We know we're a declining enrollment school, and we know there are things that are hitting us. Here's where we are. Make sure that we are hitting where, that's one of the reasons we have absorbed so many teachers, because we knew we had to do that to keep moving. So I just wanted to make that clear. That's where my connection to that comes in.
And let me say, I know I said, you know, I became superintendent July the 1st, but this is my third superintendency. So I'm familiar with budgets now. I mean, I'm not the master of it, but I think I'm pretty good. I'm definitely not gonna let this district get in fiscal distress because of this program or any other program. You know, again, if we go back to the loss of students, yes, sir, Mr. Rogers, that's a huge thing, and I wish we could stop the bleeding on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can.
jump in and ask. The loss of students is causing the fiscal challenges that you have. And I guess the students are leaving because they're looking for education alternatives elsewhere. Does New Tech, is it a program that is supposed to attract students back to the
Yes, sir,
district?
I think so. I think in its, in its full glory, I think that's what it's gonna do.
Does it do that right now?
I think it has done it. I think we've probably kept, it's kept more students, it's kept more students from leaving. Because they did have the opportunity, because they did, you know, there is a KIPP school in our district, and,
So, panel, I think we've asked a pretty exhaustive list of questions. And unless somebody has an additional question that they need clarification on, I think if we have any discussion, we could do that at this time.
hey, Dr. Crawford, can I, Mr. Rogers, did I answer your question? I'm sorry, I don't feel like I.
yeah, but it is, I guess it's one of the many concerns I have with the school district, losing and the declining fund balance, as well as the F grade at the high school. I mean, there's a lot of concerns that I have with it, and that was one of them. So I was just wanting to get your thoughts on addressing that.
Well, I can say this, in closing, we do have our challenges, there's no question about it. You know, where we are, we're not in a growing area. There's other factors for our kids that we start dealing with daily as soon as they walk into the door. But I can tell you this here, I've been there for 10 years, Blytheville is worth fighting for. Blytheville's a good school, good people, and I would go to bat, and so would these people, any day of the week for Blytheville. Thank you.
Okay, just a couple of things that I was gonna discuss with the panel, because I had checked with a couple of our folks who have been working in the district just to get their perspectives as far as things going on. And a couple of the things that they've noted, that they've seen changes this year. And I think, when we look at the historical data from the school and realizing that what's brought them was their letter grade from the 17-18 school year, that's what brought them here. But looking at what is different moving forward, it might be worth just kind of noting that they have made changes structurally within the school. You've got someone with new tech experience now leading the work. You've got they have looked at several of their initiatives, and I think the person that works for us talked about kind of an initiative purge, really focusing in on, and I think Ms. Cook alluded to, they were trying to do so many things there for a while, and they're becoming more streamlined and focused with that. I think too the goal revision, that we've noted today, they have come back with those revised goals that are ambitious, but at the same time are more aligned and realistic. As far as the concerns on the reading, which those are very serious, the work, early work with the elementary, our people have noted their work with RISE and also the PLC process, that those are things that are setting up for the right trajectory for the future. So I did want to bring those things out. Those were noted by some of our ADE staff who have been there. I didn't know if any of you had anything else that you wanted to discuss before we move into any kind of decision phase.
I had two comments. The first comment is that, with declining enrollment they're doing, I made a note that early on that they absorbed those 13 positions. I mean, that's pretty much all you can do when you have a decline in enrollment, is instead of hiring new people as the money decreases. That's where when I used to visit a lot of schools, that's when they would get in trouble at. They would lose teachers and they would hire teachers, although the enrollment is declining. So they seem to be absorbing that and doing what they're supposed to do to address that issue and working with the department. Also, I have to give them credit for their commitment to the new tech network. We pushed them a little bit, and they pushed back. So that's what you have to be. You have to believe in what you're doing, and I see that they do. So I'm still worried about making sure the fundamentals are connected there. But overall, I don't have a problem with the program if you all believe in it the way you do.
But we would expect change in
We
student
expect to see those scores
student
to
outcomes.
change now. That's.
Other comments or discussion?
I did agree that when they first started talking, that I felt like it was just trying to do too many things in too many different ways, and that's the feeling I got. But trying to, and I've said enough about the reading score, but that's what I felt like looking at it. So I guess, at this point, I hope that we are more focused on what we are trying to do, and we can see the scores going up.
Reading is fundamental.
Yes, sir.
So they have to, we expect to see some changes there.
Right.
Ms. Hyde, if you can tell me if my line of thinking is correct, that is, as we move into a decision-making phase, I know we have the revised goals, but would it make more sense first to decide on the actual report, if we want to accept the report, if we want to take any different action first, and then after that, the next step? Would that be appropriate?
I think that's probably a good idea, is to, we laid out the options earlier today, but you can put on probation with different types of, requests around that probation. You can just accept the report, you have revocation, just whatever it is that you want to do. I would do that first, like you said, before moving on to the amendment request.
Okay. So, panel, if there's not any further discussion,
Quick question.
okay.
When do they come back to us again? When are they up for renewal, or?
2021, I believe.
2021, so we do have 2 years before we see them again. I think we do need to see them sometime next year, next fall, something. Can we do it without probation? I just want to get a report. Now, if probation is necessary, that's fine too, but we need to be able to see some progress along the way. Can't wait to the renewal.
So I think, without them voluntarily, agreeing to come back at a certain time next year. And you might want to set the parameters of that, what information you want to see and when you want to see it. And if they will voluntarily agree to that, I think you can do it without probationary status. But I would encourage you to lay out what it is you want to see from them now, or maybe in the next month's meeting so that they can be prepared for that. And one of the things I forgot to mention, and I'm happy to work with them on this too, is during the conversation about the professional development waiver, I realized that the professional development waiver, as they are using it, is not fully effectuated. And so there will be a need for them to request additional waiver there. And I'm happy to work with them or with their attorney to get that figured out, but I just thought I would make note of it.
Okay.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I noticed on the information sent to us before the hearings, apparently the charter Limehouse Charter was renewed in 17 for 3 years.
Yes.
Does that make it expire in December 20? Or December 30?
June 30th, 2020. So,
Oh, okay.
which would mean if it expired June 30th, 2020, if we followed the regular schedule, you would hear them in December of 2019.
So December of this year.
Yeah.
No, I believe,
Yes, let me get Kelly up here because she has the information.
Okay. So if they came in 2017, according to our background sheet, we show that their contract is expiring on June 30th of 2021, which is because schools come in the fall before their contracts expire on June 30th of the following year. So they will not be in this next cycle, they will be in the upcoming cycle.
yeah.
The 2020, they would come.
They will
December
come,
2020.
yes, in
For renewal.
2020 for, in the fall,
Right.
for the renewal application in December.
So I think they're gonna volunteer to come in the fall of 2019.
Yes.
And if you guys will decide what you would like for them to provide, I will be happy to record and get that to them.
Okay. So is that something that should come in the form of a motion, or if they just go ahead today and agree to come back at a certain time next year, we could work that out in terms of an agreement?
Yes, if you and the applicant are not, I guess
Okay.
they're not applying for anything. If you and Blyville New Tech will, agree to when you are going to meet, and either that you will provide the information closer to the time, or if you wanna put that information out now, just the more detail, I think the better in terms of making sure we're all on the same page in agreement.
Okay. Mr. Ashley, is that something then that you all would go ahead and commit to at this time?
Yes, ma'am, and what was that date?
I think that's what we need to determine, if it would be, I guess probably, maybe December of next year would be November.
Or December of 19?
Of this year.
Yes, yes, we are in 2019.
Yes, ma'am, we would agree.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And, I mean, since we do renewal hearings in December anyway, we know that there'll be a meeting at that time. Would that be appropriate?
Yes, ma'am, that's what I was gonna
Okay.
say, is you'll already hear all of the renewals in 2019, so I don't think it would be an issue just to add this
report.
to that already scheduled meeting.
Okay. And, panel, I mean, they could provide us with a report similar to what they did today, including, those
the NWEA, I'd like to see a progression where the first score
Me
was
too.
for the next one, and
Me too.
along with what they.
Will you all have given both assessments by December of 2019? It's usually the third, yeah, it's mid-December. You will have given 2 interim assessments at that time? Okay. Okay. Does that sound good to the panel then? They're agreeing to do that, so we have, okay. All right, so with that discussion, at this time, I will entertain a motion as far as what we've heard today and whether or not you feel that there's any action to take.
So how do we codify that in a motion on the agreement, or is that not necessary? If it's not necessary, then we're just accepting the report.
I think since you've just agreed to it and they are voluntarily agreeing to come, then it would just be a motion to accept the report unless you have additional action that you would like to take. But I don't think that you need to make a motion to accept their agreement to come in.
Okay.
They've agreed on record that they will come in December of next year.
I move that we accept the report as presented.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the report as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We also need to consider the goals that they have presented. And so those goals would be part of the report that they provide for us next year, because as we've discussed, it is very important to look at the ESSA School Index and the accountability information, but it's also very important what their goals are too, as far as specific to those schools. So if at this time, I would entertain a motion on the goals that they presented today, the
Do we
revised
call
goals.
them goals, or is this a waiver request? It looks like it's listed as a waiver. I'm not quite sure.
Amendment request.
It's an amendment request. Okay.
The amendment request to revise their goals.
I move that we approve the amendment request to revise the goals.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the amendment request for the revised goals. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. And we're going to record our responses. Are we recording just the amendment, or?
I do have a blank voting sheet if you want to use the amendment request on a second, or.
Probably need to have two separate documents. Okay, so if you will use Form A7 and also the blank form, and
Okay.
Ms. McLaughlin, will you type in there what to approve the report is A7, and the blank document will be to approve the amendment request. And as we talk, give our verbal report, if you want to just combine both of your votes into one statement to give them some feedback, I think that would be valuable. So we'll start with Mr. Wilson.
I voted for both motions, or actually one motion.
Yeah, both of them.
I voted for both of them because I think we need more time to allow for the current testing program in order to see growth, or hopefully see growth, and have a little better direction on where we go, where the school goes from there.
Okay. Ms. Newton?
I voted for, and Mr. Wilson sums up my explanation of amendments of the goals, and it needs to be done so to give direction of improvement in different areas.
Mr. Rogers?
I voted for both motions. The first one, to accept the report as presented. I do have concerns about the reading at grade level and science achievement, as well as the overall finances of the district. And then for the goals, I voted for those. Amendment of the goals is probably needed, and hopefully they'll help see increases in student performance.
Okay. Dr. Williams?
Okie dokie. If I hadn't lost it somewhere.
Really puts, we
Okay,
all
here
have to
you
be
go.
on the same page literally here.
Yes, I found it. When I switched to the other page, I lost my first page. Okay, here's the first motion. Support the motion to accept the report. Given that they agreed to provide an update report in December 2019, we acknowledge that there are academic concerns that need to be reviewed. The updated report will inform us on next steps regarding those concerns. And the next one was support the motion. The amendment of the goals seem to be more in line with their work.
Okay. Dr. Kramers?
I voted to approve the motion to accept the presentation of current academic status based on the verbal agreement that the school will provide an academic progress update in December showing improvements. Also approve the motion to approve the amendment of the goals.
All right. And Mr. Baldwin, you remember what you
Yes,
put in
I do.
here? Okay.
I voted yes for both motions. I think the goals that you all have changed and established now are more realistic, and I do believe you're gonna have some specific action steps to achieve those.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I know it's been a long afternoon, but we hope that we wish you all the best moving forward. So thank you for being here. And Mr. Ballard, is there anything else that the panel needs to attend to today? No. And we have a meeting in February, on February 19th, and we'll be back here. Okay. So if there are no other items, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
She said we'll be back tonight.
Second.
And all those in favor, we are adjourned.
Okay.
That's all right.
All right.